Welcome back to the FNtasia podcast, episode number 49. And it's a big one because Grand Finals is upon us this weekend. The EU and NA Grand Finals will be taking place. And we're bringing back something that we've not done in a while. I think it's been over 6 months since we've done it. But it was requested by some of you amazing viewers. And that is the bracket, the FNtasia final bracket. It is our way of giving some predictions and thoughts on finals. You know, it's funny because we obviously record the episode of the podcast quite early in the week, and you know, the Grands week is always very chaotic and things change, and so you know you end up giving your predictions right before Grand starts, and like that's like the best time to give your predictions. Like not as much BS changing. One of the biggest parts, actually, we should mention to start off, is because we're recording this before last round's qualifier, there's only 30 teams we're going to be talking about today. There's still 3 teams in each, region that we don't know who's going to be in the finals. But unlike last season, it doesn't really feel like there's 2 crazy big names that like we need to go through last chance qualifiers. So
that doesn't mean that they're not going to contest big names if it's just some absolute stinky teams that come through.
True. In fact, that's an even bigger problem, really. But yeah, so for the people who don't know how this works, we literally have a bracket that is very American football, basketball sort of, March Madness style. I'll show you guys the bracket here. And we have all 30 teams so far within EU. We'll start off with EU. We'll do ANA next. And we have all 30 teams qualified to Grands in the bracket. As you can see, there are 2 teams who have already progressed to the next round, and that is because they are the 2 teams that have qualified for the Global Championships. So we gave them a bye round in the first round. And the goal of the bracket for us is to basically pick the team we think is going to place higher, right? And so it's like a chain of like, we think this team's going to place higher than that team, and we think that team's going to place higher than that team, until we, in theory, have our agreed winning team at the end of the
Never
bracket.
Works out like that. Never works out.
Every single time we've done it, we've looked back and been like, they're really going to win.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of the bracket, That's the beauty of the bracket. So before we even take a look at the bracket, I actually will show the map because obviously, we obviously always have to talk about the drop map whenever we're talking about competitive Fortnite and a final. Is there anything interesting here to you guys at first going into Grands?
Firstly, all the good teams are uncontested, pretty much. Like all the teams that you would look at to say would win an FNCS, Vico Flexi, you got Queasy's team, Cammy's team, you've got like Thomas's team, who's also obviously look good as well. You're gonna pick like top 4 or 5. Basically, they're all on con. I think the only interesting off spawn we have so far is Crime City with Tayson Chicho Jerez against Champ Tini Scavi. 2 teams who could easily put in a top 5 uncon, but right now, like. Both fighting off spawn against each other in Crime City. We'll see how that actually ends up going. And then obviously, like as I mentioned before, once the LCQ comes through, there'll be a bit more interesting fights. But right now, all these off spawns are just extremely sleeper.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, literally, as you said, the only one which was somewhat interesting, which we'll get into in a minute because it's in the bracket, is the Outlaw Oasis one as well, which we saw in Heat 3. So, but right now it is just, if you're a team coming through last chance qualifier, I mean, good luck trying to find a landing spot on this map.
Yeah.
There is nothing left.
Most of them probably end up conning like Kappa or Hopeful Heights. If that doesn't happen, if none of those 3 teams end up conning like bottom right map, it actually could be difficult for Surge, right? For a lot of those of our top teams, because who are they going to trade? Like, who are they going to tag against? Like on rotation, there's such little teams and no like third parties that they can fight there. So yeah, I think that if no teams contest anywhere in that bottom right, might be a little bit tricky for guys like, Thomas, Vino, and Queasy.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into it then. Let's just get right into the bracket. We have the first matchup here, and you mentioned it already, Harry, because obviously with this matchup, you have 2 teams who we have seen sort of fighting and going up against each other. So we have Jew, Ziandi, and Fincheck versus Vostroki, Focus, and Janice. What do we make of this?
Man, so this is before we start, I'll be nice. I won't actually be nice. Before we started, I was like, I've got my sheet, and I was like, I wonder what are the placements we've seen this season from these teams? Now, obviously, we've seen like a bunch of the mix-up. Like Fastroki was playing with Jew at some point. There's been a bunch of switch arounds. But I looked at the placements. So if you type Jew into my spreadsheet for the first four place 16th, then it's 32nd, 32nd, 31st. And some of those are with Fastroki as well. If I put Fastroki's one in, yeah, it's like obviously they're all the same placement because they played together there. Who's gonna win? Harry, you said they were fighting on this weekend. What do you know the score? How is the beef off spawn? I'll be real. I don't care because once these people go through, we're just voting pig blocks anyway.
Yeah, I think just to like kind of say how it went, it was basically split every game. As Outlaw Oasis is you're landing, there's nothing really too 50-50. It's just all buildings that have pretty similar loot. There is a vault on the south side, but once you kind of loot up, it's a weird little fight. And every single game, they just swerved. I think Fastrogi, Focus, and Janice swerved every game, which is why as soon as you saw, I think it was Pixdam and Demus win a game, they tried to go pump power. Then the next game when Mr. Savage won, they went Mass Meadows to qualify, right? So if I'm just going off who is going to do best from the spot, because Ju, Finchik, and Ziandi were still doing decent enough when they were contested, I would go with Ju, Ziandi, and Finchik, just because Fastrogi, Focus, and Janice, it looked like they were playing to split and run and play scrap loot every single game, and it looks so scuffed for them. So I wouldn't really expect too much out of them into this grand finals.
Yeah, I vote. I vote that. I agree.
Yeah, it's interesting though because Ju, Ziandi, and Finchik, like obviously last season when Ju and Ziandi were playing with Shark, they were a team that I saw getting a lot of hype, and I remember us talking on the pod about how we weren't as excited about that team come grands, and some people seem to be a bit like, what? How can you think that? Like, they got Shark. He's the next up and coming GOAT. Like, come on, put some respect. And then they came like 22nd or something.
Yeah.
So with that, like, I don't, coming in when I saw that they were playing with Finchek, I didn't necessarily think that this was going to be the move that moves them up. I still see them in that sort of range of just like bottom half grand team. With what you said with the Osborne, I'm sort of like, yeah, that like yesterday it was interesting because at first when I saw that Janice had moved, I was like, surely he's not just gone like full boot pussy strat and just ran off at the first opportunity, but then when I checked Twitter, he did say like I was landing pumped this season. That's my reasoning. And then they got bossed off spawn at pump, and then it was like he's at Mars. He's like, well, I landed Mars, so it's like it's fine. It's like, all right, man, like, what are we doing there?
Like, imagine they didn't win that game and they were calm there.
Yeah,
I've landed Crime City, guys.
Like, where would you have gone? With that being said, we put him through Drew.
Yeah,
put him through Ziandi.
Yeah.
Okay. I forgot to do this now. Oh,
there
just click. Nice. Cool. Oh my God, that felt so good. Can we move people back? I think we can. I don't know how we do it though. Yeah, all right, next matchup. It's fine. Next matchup, we have iDrop, Sky, and Scroll versus Belusi, Gabix, and Ricky.
Surely. Should have just got to be an iDrop.
Yeah, just move iDrop.
Uncon, shiny shaft.
Yeah. Where Belusi and them landing?
South of Outlaw Oasis, the split south of it, with the Dilbit factories and that split there. It's actually a pretty decent split, but apparently then they might be getting contested by Moneymaker now there, which, I mean, even if they weren't getting contested, I'd still put iDrop through, but that's another nail in the coffin.
All right, then. Okay, for our next matchup, we have Shark, Trulex, and Noah versus Hutty, Dexy, and Artist.
Obviously, they're Uncon Foxy. I'm concerned about how they want. I've not watched too much to see how their Surge strat is, but obviously Surge and Grands is much different. Last season we saw them just sitting on the hills inside Foxy and it not working whatsoever because just no one was rotating past those hills come Grands. So I'm slightly concerned about Surge for them. But now they've got so much more firepower with Noah and Shark that if they need to fight, I think they're probably a little bit better set up for that. Hutty, Dexy, and Artist sitting are they not in the bottom right? They're at Kappa. Yeah. I feel probably end up being the team who gets farmed by Thomas, maybe by Vico. It depends how they want to fight, if they want to rotate around Edge to do it. So I mean, I'm just putting on Shark.
Yeah, agreed. There are still some worries about Shark, Trulex, and Noah that when we get into versus iDrop, we can talk about. But yeah, for sure, when you're looking at that bottom right of the map and you're thinking of a team like Thomas or Vino who want to maybe get a little bit more aggressive for Surge if it's going bad, I mean, they are just going to be farmed and probably going to be contested as well if they get a team goes through.
I was going to say, yeah. This looks like a team that will probably be contested. Like, there's a good chance by the time a lot of you guys are watching this, they are currently contested. But obviously for us, we're recording on Monday. Right now, they're not contested. We don't know where last chance qualified teams are going to land. But if you are a last chance qualified team, there's not many options on the map. It's probably not a bad idea landing either there or Hopeful Heights. On to the next matchup. We have some Italians. We have Zara Zangi and Rick Bohr versus Stormy Wright, Arco, and Ahead. I thought.
No, they were the ones who got banned.
It was Fire Hunter. Yeah, I was like, I swear they're not playing anymore.
No, Kentic was the one who got banned. Kentic got banned from Fire Hunter straight.
Okay.
I mean, Zara's team has actually done relatively well in Div Cups. Like, they have an 8th and 12th. Whereas, it seems like Stormy Wright's team just came out of nowhere and just won, a bit of. They did well in obviously like the play-ins and then just did well in their group. I have no further analysis because they all look like they're fighting each other off spawn, potentially in the top left of the map with Moneymaker there. If Moneymaker does leave, then might not have to be an awkward fight. So I'm not 100%, but I'm just going straight on vibes alone. I'm going to put it with Zara's team.
Yeah,
I'd agree.
Agreed.
I said this not on the broadcast because I probably would have got in trouble if I said this. But I said, like, right as they won, I was like, Stormy Wright in grand finals in 2025. Like, what are we doing there? Stormy Wright is a legend of EU in his own right in the CIS region. His last grand finals was Chapter 3, Season 3, when I was commentating with Takata and Janice and Video 1. And so,
do you know where he placed?
Where did he place?
47th out of 50.
Big placement.
Yeah. But he came second 2 seasons before that with Kiriachi. So,
There you go. And he'll always be remembered for that. So, Zangi and them, we'll put them through. The next matchup, Moneymaker for Nyan and Faded Pigeon up against Demas, Pix, and Dom. Demas, Pix, and Dom will just be going through here.
Yeah.
We sort of already mentioned Money's team. They might obviously move because right now on the map it looks like they're triple calling, but I doubt that's going to happen. Maybe, who knows, because they were landing there, for quite a bit. But yeah, Demas, Pix, and Dom just go through.
Was impressed with them this weekend, though, to be fair. Moneymaker for Nyan and Faded Pigeon, from what people expect, again, top of consistency in Heat 3. It's not really the way people expect. I would expect Moneymaker to qualify to a grand finals, I think it was very impressive to see.
Yeah, they sort of like came back a bit towards the back end of their games. No, or was it that, or did they start? I can't remember which one it was, but I think, they started really quietly, and then like by the end, it was like, hold on a minute, these guys are first in consistency. It was quite impressive. All right, the next matchup we have is Kamiseti Chari versus Noya, Misha, and Yasin.
Move them through. Just get them through.
Come on, bro.
Okay, sorry.
Get them through.
Sorry. Giras, Franek, and Dinas versus Blaha, Mixon, and Comeback.
It's got to be a I can't even speak. My God, it's got to be a Blaha, Mixon, and Comeback situation. They
looked so good.
They looked so. This was the main thing about this weekend. I feel like no one came out of it looking that much better than going into it, apart from these guys. They overperformed every expectation. Giras, Franek, and Dinas is very interesting because I saw it on Twitter. I think Queasy said it maybe like a month ago. It's like every zone that pulls bottom left, Giras wins. It's just guaranteed in evals and scrims, everything. And every time I've been watching and I see the games and they pull bottom left or they pull just south, I just see Giras on high every single game. And I was the same in that heat. There was a game where I think he came second. It was Taste the Game Tasting one where it's the same thing.
Yes.
And it's like every time I'm watching that zone, I'm just like, well, they're just going to guaranteed have a good game here because they can just sit on the lone wolf head and just tag everyone, or the wolf head and tag everyone from Canyon. But yeah, Blaha, Mixon, and Comeback have just looked too good this weekend.
Yeah, it's actually an unfair matchup for Giras. There's a couple people they could have gone up against and actually went through, but because you're right, when we're doing sort of the prep for groups, like you're looking at all the times at like teams who have won a lot of games, and Giras, Franek, and Dinas have won like a lot of games in set lobbies this season, a lot more than most teams in the lobby, and so. You're sort of looking at why, obviously, the thing Queasy said about the zones, and you're looking and like they just always have games that are good when it pulls, in that area. But Mix and Black and Combat just looked way too good. Like, they just looked way too good.
Being out in the first round's rough because these guys are probably like 10th top 15 team in Grands.
Yeah.
I would say top 10 wouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Tough first round matchup, but it happens. On to the next matchup. We have Grippe, Glubsheet, and Prax versus Sanguild, Jewel, and Tidy.
They're fighting off spawn.
Yeah, Magic Moss.
So basically, they're just getting ran through off spawn by every single team around them.
Absolutely. But which one of them will run through each other first before the other teams run through?
I think Sanguild. Because even though Gripe landed there last season, he landed there in Grands last season, I'm pretty sure Uncon. With Glubsheet and Rezoy, I think it was. But yeah, just watching Sanguild, Jewel, and Tiddy, like from going through plans, they've looked pretty impressive, to be honest. Because going into this, I thought the best Magic Monsters team would have been Wheat, Nefresia, and Lucia going into it, but they didn't even make it out. They didn't even make it out. So I would have put Sanguild, Jewel, and Tiddy as the next best team. And I mean, Gripe has been landing there. He's been landing Flooded Frogs the entire season, or recently in plans at least. So I would just put it to Sanguild for more experience at the spot this season. But as you said, Reese, it is just they are pump power is looting in 1 minute, and they're in the POI fighting everyone.
Yeah, these guys are the Demon's team. You got Marius's team, Flooded Frogs next to them. You got Malibuca's team next as well. Like whoever wins this is just getting cleaned up straight away. So
yeah. Bit of a shame. It's funny because you mentioned the Frizzy's team, and who knows, they might still make it to Grands because of last month's qualifier. But you know, when I was watching some of the games that Demons, Pix, and Dam like struggled in, a lot of the time they would just die to the Frizzy's trio. Like there was like 3 games in a row I watched, and it was like they just died to the Frizzy's trio, and you're like, that's their kryptonite. But you know, those guys aren't here now.
You're seeing they're winning FNtasia, and there you go.
Potentially. Okay. For our next matchup, it's getting juicy. We have Pink, Nebs, and Kiro, who are landing at Demon's Dojo, up against Kiduo, Volko, and Cringe, who are landing. Are they landing for train still? I think they're landing for train still.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, Kiduo, Volko, and Cringe kind of have they just got together before plans. They were playing with Cade, I think it was Volko.
Yeah.
Was it Volko, Cringe, and Cade? And Kiddo was with other players. But they looked pretty decent in heats. I wouldn't say it was like outstanding performance. I think they came 10th or 5th in consistency, 4th in consistency.
I was a bit disappointed with them in groups, to be honest.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. They kind of didn't really show as much as I expected, especially in a heat which was much weaker. You know, you're looking at that heat, they were definitely one of the best teams. I'd say top 5 teams in that heat. And they didn't really dominate the lobby as you expect a team with maybe the loot they would be getting. But I still expect them to do well. I still think they will do really well because of Crime City being contested. They're just going to be able to go get the Mythic Pump and third party it for sure. And that layout and that setup helps them a lot.
Yeah.
But I think Pink, Nebs, and Kira have been too consistent this season. I think they've been one of the better teams in the EU. And also, I wasn't as impressed with Pink, Nebs, and Kira as I thought I would be going into this heat, but they're still just a better team overall. So
I'd agree.
Yeah, they were still 3rd on consistency overall. They've still had some insane tournaments this season.
I would agree. Now we have Savage, Vidil, and Reason versus RD, Darkiz, and Phalex. Now, for the people who might be watching the bracket for the first time, there's one thing you have to learn. Sometimes we give you analysis, sometimes we give you pure vibes and storyline. And so I don't care what happens. Mr. Savage has my backing. And this is storyline. We're putting him through. Yeah. It's done.
You're not getting any disagreement from the
no
it's the storyline. It's the storyline. Okay. For our next match, shout out to RD, Darkiz, and Phalex. So they literally qualified in the final game of Group 3, which was cool. And they like needed it because they were like in 28th or something. So they were not going to be qualifying had they not won that game. Okay, we now have a really interesting off-spawn matchup here because we have Tayson, Haris, and Chicho versus Chap, Teeny, and Skavi. They're both contesting each other at Crime City. who's going to come out on top?
I mean, you could. This is just like a tough one to pick because you would typically say that Teeny's been a really good off-spawn fighter.
Yes, he has. Yep.
But I would say like the fighting skill on both of these teams is probably well balanced. Like Teeny Chap with like Chicho Harris, Skavi versus Tayson. I'd say like maybe those two comparisons are relatively all right. So I have no clue. I'll be absolutely honest. My main fear here is that if Tayson starts to do poorly, is the mentality just gone for the rest of the days? Is there like is it clutchable back after that? So I think we went with the vibes pick before. I'm going with the anti-vibes pick this time. I think I'm going to go Chap Teeny Skavi.
I would agree because every time they've contested, I'm fairly certain every time they've contested each other in a set lobby, Chap Teeny Skavi has done better. And there was a 4-0 in an eval finals. I'm pretty sure there was another div finals where Chap Teeny Skavi did better. It just feels like they always get the better of them, which is surprising because I think you're saying they're evenly matched. On paper, I would say Tayson's trio is better. I would say Tayson is better than Skavi, and then Harris, Chicho, Chap, and Teeny. Like, you can argue either way about it. But I think just based on what we've seen, I think it is just going to be Chap, Teeny, Skavi. Now, you could argue that Tayson, Harris, and Chicho might get better games when they win off spawn. There's an argument to be made for that, for sure.
Well, look, I did set it up as who does better in the off spawn, but it is who do you think places higher in Grands?
Exactly.
So when you look at it like that, does that change anything for you?
I need to consult the spreadsheet for a second.
Yeah, get the spreadsheet. I'm going to stick with my first now. I think Chap, Teeny, and Skavi will place higher. I think they.
Is this hard for you, Harry? Watching Harris and Skavi go against each other and not together.
Yeah. I mean, they're just like a toxic relationship. Every time they're either like fighting on Twitter or then they're like playing. They're like, I'm never playing with this guy again. Next week they're playing together, and now they're conning each other off spawn. It's like next season they'll be playing with each other again. Like they'll be cheering again. It's like, yeah, it is funny to look at, but yeah, I mean that was what I was expecting. Like all of last year was the new Balkan duo coming up together, but it is a shame.
I hope they like hug each other in game, so we get like top 5 respect moments in Fortnite compilation. And
when they're 33rd and 32nd after getting cleaned up by trains for every game. They just
R11, what are you thinking then? You're asking a lot of questions.
So I was thinking about the general narratives of like the two major players in this team. So I'm looking at Tayson and I'm looking at like Teeny. And I'm trying to think back to when Tayson's been conned recently, and I might be missing one, but the ones I can remember is obviously last year with Veno when they were landing at Frenzy, and that did not go well. And then I remember back to duos back in the day with Chapix when they were landing like
French
Lake with the French people, and they bossed them day 1 and then got bossed day 2. And so I'm like, because it's interesting, like it's not been many times where Tayson's been contested. We talk about EU GOAT status, all this, but like he's not been conned many times. But when he has been conned, it's not gone too great. Whereas I look at Teeny and I think of great off-spawn player when I think of Teeny. I think of someone that's going to make it incredibly uncomfortable for their opponent off spawn. And at a spot like Crime City, where it's like, like you can play with Crime City, you got room to play with in an off spawn. And so I just feel like I'd give the edge to Chap, Teeny, and Skavi. And so I think I would put them through. I really could see both of these teams sort of just being like almost next to each other in the leaderboards, though. Like an 11th, 12th type vibe, But yeah, we'll see. I think I'll put through Chap, Teeny, and Skavi though. So we got the majority there. For the next matchup, we have Vanya, Marius, and Pixie versus Podasai, Xweeze, and Artskill.
Apologies to the M8 fans. Or we're just Vanya just going through.
Yeah. Well, actually, the M8 fans can be happy. Yeah. No.
Oh well, you're right. You're right.
The French fans.
I think Clutch did that on purpose so that we guaranteed couldn't upset M8 because we had to put one M8 through. Like,
True.
That's just what happened. Yeah. Prototype Swedes art skill, props to them, but
good to see a full French trio. You know, there's not many of them that have done well this weekend, but they were definitely one. I think got back-to-back second place in game 1 and game 2 in heat 1. It was and then they was like close. I thought they weren't going to qualify because the points just get higher and higher. It was insane how high points were to qualify for consistency this whole week for heats. It was like 200 points in every single heat. But no, they surprised them. They impressed me somewhat. With Whiffy being triple con or even double con, I mean, they definitely can have a good weekend for sure. It's again an unlucky bracket draw because they're definitely better than some other teams who have been moved through.
I think that's fair. Okay, looking at our next matchup, we have Robin, Cheating, and Trexer up against Thomas, Uppel, and Panzer. I think we all put Thomas's trio through. Yep. They've been looking pretty strong of late. Thomas, in particular, yesterday in the groups, looked unbelievable with that drum gun. Oh my! It didn't even look. It was disgusting.
We got to get BloodX back on the cheating allegations of this guy. I'm telling you.
No, genuinely. I'll say there was something I saw that was in particular that was just insane. But we'll get to it. Our final first round matchup, though, we have Akira, Karama, and Werex versus Queasy, Swizzy, and Mustache.
You said that Clut did this bracket to make it so M8 fans are guaranteed through. I think he did this so all the French teams are out. He put all the French teams against some of the best teams in the EU. It's another unfortunate team, probably the best French team this season. I think they came ninth in another finals, did insanely well they won the first game in heats. And they're looking really, really strong coming into this uncontested as well. I wouldn't be surprised to see them in and around the top 10, but it's Queasy, Swizzy, and Mustache. You know,
he tactically hid the French teams with like M8 teams, so like the French fans are conflicted. It's like, should I be mad or should I be happy? I don't know. All right, that's the first round concluded. Let's go back up to the top because now we have the introduction of a team who got to pass through the first round because of their global qualification status, and that is Pingwox and Malabuka versus Juice, Yandy, and Fincheck. Props to Juice, Yandy, and Fincheck, but I think we'd all put Malabuka's trio through.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty clean and straight through. We will go through to the next matchup. We have is this the I'm really dumb. So this is the final, semi-final, quarterfinal.
Yeah.
So what is it? Round of 16. Round of 16. There you go. So in our next matchup in the round of 16 is iDrop Sky Scroll versus Shark, Trulex, and Noah Riley.
Yeah. I mean, this is a tough one.
Closer one.
This is a tough one because if this was last season, like we would give it to iDrop, I'm sure, like nothing. Because they did so good and throughout most of the Div Cups, did good in their heat. Still top 10 in Grands as well. This season, obviously, they've been conned. They've been stinking it up in some of the Div Cups. They've been hit or miss. Not even had like a top 5 in there yet. Whereas obviously, like Shark, Trulix, and Noah's team is still haven't played as much together. There's not as much like proof of concept there yet. So it's a bit more of a difficult pick.
I feel with this team in iDrop's team, it's been a rough sort of period in time for them because they sort of had the new trio bounce where, you know, it's a honeymoon period, everything's going right. And then they get to Grand and they just don't have a great performance by the standards that were set before that, right? You know, a lot of people would have expected them to be a lot higher up in the leaderboards. Now, after that result, the honeymoon period's just been done.
Yeah.
And you know, like it's just been done. And like you rightfully mentioned, Reese, that like, sure, they've been conned, and in those situations they've been conned, it's been really bad, like bottom 3 in whatever the lobby is.
Almost as stinky as you can be.
Yeah, literally, like bottom 3 is guaranteed every time they're con. But even when they're uncon, again, it just doesn't. It in a weird way, it's kind of like what you would expect from them, like results wise. Because the thing is, last season was sort of just like, oh wow, these guys are like taking that next step now, right? It was like, oh, Sky Scroll, we've had them around for a year. They've been really good. Now they're actually going to join up with like, you know, the Camis and the Taysons and the Venos of the world and like just be like a contending Grands team. Whereas like, actually, if coming into this year, I had said before what we saw from them in Major 1, if I had said to you, iDrop Sky Scroll are going to play together and they're going to be a team that probably tops 10s most finals that they play in, but like, you know, not really pushing to like win or anything, you would have said, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And they placed ninth, so like that would be a fair thing for you to say.
And I think that's probably what's going to happen here again this weekend. Uncon. But when I look at Shark, Trulex, and Noah, I am a bit worried.
Yeah.
I wanted to, before we go on this, I just want to quick say about iDrop Sky and Scroll. There was one, because you've talked about their finals, and yeah, when they're conned, completely scuffed. The most scuffed as it could be, right? You know, they're getting triple con and quad con. If you look through iDrop's tweets, it's insane some of the things they're going through. But there was 7th place where they were actually first, and it was iDrop's first. I think it was iDrop's first finals on Havoc, and he was doing all the streaming and stuff, and he had no audio last 2 games. So they went from first with 4 games left to no audio, and they just completely ruined everything. Not saying that like just to be a defender, but they have had some good finals. I do think they are definitely. They're landing at a better spot than last season. I think Sky and Scroll have got more experience. And I think, especially in the heats, if you watch their game, Scroll and Sky genuinely played incredible. I think it was some of the clutches they had, some of how scuffed some of the games were when you go back and watch them. I think there was a game where Scroll 1v3 to Trio when they were like got keyed in game 1 and it clutched them like 60 points. I think there's another game like where Sky clutches more points because they're just getting 4 on rotates. But I do think they can do really well this season and this week in grand finals. I do think they're still that good of a trio. I don't want to be sat here going, because last season I was going into grand finals going, you know what? I don't think, you know, it's the iDrop when it comes to grand finals. He, you know, doesn't perform as well as during the season. He had it with Nebs, he had it with Jerky, you know, he's had it multiple times, right? But I do think if they are uncontested this weekend, it should go a lot more smoothly. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win or anything, but I do think it's still in a conversation that it should be a quite smooth weekend. And now you get to Shark, Trulex, and Noah, there's a lot more questions and a lot more problems.
And with that being said, then, do you feel confident putting iDrop's trio above Trulex's trio in terms of who you think places higher?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
Yeah, because Shark, Trulex, and Noah, they were doing some interesting things with Surge. Like you see with the Foxy Hills, you see, you know, they take both Foxy Hills, they sit there. They were like taking the Foxy Hill, and then they were going next to like the West Foxy Hill and like building like the ramp base to be in render of like the Crime City team. So then they could trade Surge. And they were trying to do some new ideas, and some of it worked, some of it didn't. But I think with Trulex this season, it's kind of different to what you expect. With Trulex, it's always going to make 12 end games, but their end games are going to be mid. With this trio, it feels like they might make less end games, but their end games are going to be better. The end games were better this weekend. They got a 2nd. I think they got a 5th as well. They had better end games when they made it, but they just had a couple of scuff games. And in a grand finals, you have those few scuff games, you're moving down to like 10th in the leaderboard with the quality we do have in EU. So
yeah,
I would put iDrop through for sure.
Okay. Any final thoughts on Shark, Trulex, Noah?
No, I haven't seen enough of them. You know, they got together like a few weeks ago, didn't play together for the most of the season, so it's like I haven't watched. I love the potential in this team. I love the vibe. I love the idea. I love the theory crafting of having 2 like insane players. I want to see Prime Noah back. You know, we've seen clips of it throughout this year. Generally, Sharks unreal. Trulex always puts them in a good spot. But I've just not seen enough to put them over iDrop's team. No way.
Yeah. Weirdly, I don't like the makeup of this team. It just feels, it just like purely from like, it just feels like too much of like a pick and mix and match stuff. Like it doesn't, and it is right because they sort of came together like a bit last minute. Like everyone's trying to find a team and figure it out, but like, it just feels like a bit like I just needed someone good to play with, and like these are the guys available. It's like.
You think maybe their play styles are too polar opposite? You know, Shark and Trulex. If you think what a best Shark team would look like, they would be more
that's the problem, you know. It's like it doesn't.
Team.
Yeah, and especially because we were so used to seeing Trulex obviously with Chicho and understanding of they're gonna play a certain way. And like you said, it's like you think of Shark and O'Reilly, and it doesn't really align. But anyway, yeah, we'll see how they do. They might prove me wrong. They might light the world on fire. I hope they do, because I like all three of them individually as players a lot.
Before we move on to another team, if it doesn't work out for Tayson's team and it doesn't work out for Trulex's team, surely we see Chicho go back with Trulex next season.
They'll get the honeymoon phase again. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
They've had this break, like, oh, we're trying out, and it's just both of them kind of done. It's like, we need to get back together. It's a guaranteed global, so we get back
together. Yeah, we've had that one season. That was it. The boys are back. Yeah.
All right, next matchup: Zara Zangi and Rick Ball versus Demas, Pix, and Dom. Unlucky setup here.
Yeah.
Yep. Move Demas.
Demas, Pix, and Dom just win that, I think. Don't think anyone will have any qualms there. We now have a Polish matchup.
Polish mentioned 2x.
There you go. Kami Setian Chari versus Blaha, Mixon, and Comeback.
You know, everyone, for the most part, I think if you just took these two at name value, you would say Kami Setian. But something in me just wants to say Mixon's team, even though I know that's not. I know that's not correct.
Hey, you're killing me, bro.
Because here's the thing, right? Like, we've seen this before. We've had a great season. We've had some great Div Cups. Kami Setian looking amazing, and then come Grands, just boom, you're conned, and that's it. And those three teams that are left, I'm just looking at it, and they're probably eyeing up boxcars and be like, I know there's 11 chests there. I know that place is some ass, but I'm thinking here. I'm actually wondering, has this been a strategical decision by Kami Setian to take brutal boxcars, a PY that's so bad to be split or to con, that they're like, surely no one's stupid enough to land on us in Grands, because they'd be landing in such crap loot. So maybe my theory's gone, but
yeah, it is funny because it's like, if you get everything uncon, you get 40 chests, getting all the blobs, you're getting like so many spare hills, you got the boxcar hills, you're conning, and you're either landing on the hill with 3 chests, or you're landing in the POI with 10 chests and getting shot by the hill. It's like, either way, it's just not fun to contest. Hey, to back your point, they were both in the most stacked heat and heat 2. Who placed higher? Who? Blaha, Mixon, and Comeback.
Yes. Okay, I'll let you continue.
No, but look, I said, after the Grands, I said, I'm pretty sure I said, leave the Fortnite before the Fortnite leaves you. Kami Setian and Chari. I was like, they got a split. And I have the same gut feeling as you, Reese. It's like, they've done so well. Everything is lined up. They're like boxcars. All the zones are going to boxcars. It's like they're just having to sit on the hills for 5 zones, and then they just get all their surge. But something is telling me, the vibe is telling me, that something has to go wrong. Something's telling me.
I've just screenshotted my spreadsheet, right? And I've put it in our Discord chat. Tell me that doesn't look like the exact same fucking thing. Season 1 to season 2. Tell me the trends are not following the same path.
Oh boy, it does look rather similar.
It does.
But look, so the problem here is, which should be mentioned for people who maybe don't have as much context, is they have been very good this season, which was the case last season. But in grand finals, if they're cons, history has shown us time and time again that it will just not go well for them. Now, it's funny because I tried to show this on the broadcast on the weekend, and so we have like a nice little new graphic where you can show previous results.
Mikkel was very proud. He did message me being like, "Did you see it?"
He was over the moon, and we all used the graphic like 14 times over and over again, so that they get more new graphics for us. But their last 5 Grands results are horrific.
Yeah.
You have the Chapter 5 Season 2 3rd place, where, Kami played out of his absolute mind, and it was like insane. Great result, but they probably should have even won that FNTS when you look at how they played. And outside of that, they've not been able to top 20 anything. They weren't able to top 20 any of the other majors last year. They didn't top 20 last season. They didn't top 20 in globals. That's crazy.
Over not over a year. 1 in a year. Sorry.
Yeah, and it's like, if they are cons, I think everything you guys are saying is right, especially when you're comparing them to Blaha's team, who looks very solid, and they look like they're going to be a team that, like, you sort of know what you're going to get, and they're going to be very solid. But because they're not conned yet, I'm going to go off the copium that they stay uncon. And if they are uncon, I fully believe this team has one of the best setups to actually just win FNCS this season.
Yeah. I can hear that.
Like,
I can hear that. I'll let you finish.
I was just, the last thing I was going to say is, like, all the things you talked about them getting if they're uncon, right? The 50 chests, the blobs, the heals that they can use, right? And we know how much they've been playing Storm this season. And you know, when we had Queasy on the pod earlier this season, he was like, "Hey, Cammy and say they're doing the invitational strat. These guys trust me, they're the biggest threat this season." It was funny because on the pod he was like, "They can't say uncon, guys. Like, how are they uncon? Like, no, like, you guys shouldn't let them be uncon, right?" And I think if they stay uncon, they should be contending.
They should be.
You know, without like putting too much pressure, like they genuinely should be contending. And I would go as far as saying, like, if they stay uncon and they're not contending, but it's a good placement, like a 5th or something, I'd be very let down by that. Like, I'd be incredibly let down.
Wow, they placed 5th after what you just said, being that they've had a top 3 in the last year and a bit, and you say a 5th is an underperformance.
Yeah.
Yes, because this is and this is what one thing I tried to highlight on the broadcast that is so tough with this team is that their underperformances, like, they have to be contextualized in that, like, they've not been bad. You know, sometimes with like teams of that caliber, they start having like stinky grands placements, and like you're watching them throughout seasons, and you're just like, this doesn't make sense. Like, you guys have lost it a bit. Like, I'm trying to think of an example without being too rude.
Don't make an example. I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
You know, there's players who you can use as an example. Players who were like considered top of EU at a point. They started having a couple bad performances in grands, and then when you actually watch them during seasons, you're just like, oh, like, you are just bad now. You actually kind of just stink now. That's not the case with Kamisei. Like, you can look at the performances and go, this is really bad. You probably should split, leave the Fortnite before the Fortnite leaves you, etc. But then you like watch them, and you're like, oh, like, you guys are one of the best teams in the region. Like, you're really good. Yeah. You know what to do. You're playing really well. Like, it's hard to balance that.
So I wanted to have a conversation. Like, do you think Fortnite's got to a point where it's changed? Because in what I mean by that is, Kamisei and Cherry, in your head, they have to play perfect. Their whole thing is they play perfect. They have the perfect play style, and if it works, it goes correct, right? Yeah. But when things go wrong, literally anything goes wrong, and they have to either fight a team because they're below Surge, or whether they have to change up their strategy because it hasn't worked perfectly, it just goes wrong. They don't have that, like, what's the right word? Adaptability, maybe. Yeah, there you go. Adaptability. They don't have the adaptability as much as, if their playstyle is not perfect and they do not play perfect on the day, they are going to underperform. They did it in a lot of last chapter. They did it at globals, and off spawn is obviously a completely different conversation, but still didn't play well off spawn as well. I am worried that they have to play at such a high level to their playstyle that if they don't play to that level, they will just have another underperformance. And as you said, it comes to a point where you have to have the conversation and go, you can't dud for a year, or out of the past 6 grands, have 1 good grand, and we still are pushing them for like conversations for winning. Because I totally agree. Everything they should win. Like, they should be in at least contention for winning. They have
they should contend.
Yeah, they should be in the conversation for winning, of course. But I do disagree in the fact that you said, like, some of their grands that there's context behind it. Obviously, some they're conned, but globals, they were uncon. The chapter 5 season 1, they were uncon. Like, and they still underperform those. It's not just about being contested, right? I think there is more to it than that. But
but even those like chapter 5 season 1, without getting into like a big thing of it, like the reason why I said context with like those ones, for example, like chapter 5 season 1 ended up being a meta that just didn't play into their hands at all.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I feel like this season the meta actually somewhat plays into their hands, and so it's like part of me setting that up of like, oh, if they're not contending, there would be a big problem. Is because if they stay unconned, whatever they do this finals to me is basically as good as it gets.
Yeah, this meta's really good for them.
You know what I mean?
It's what you're saying is, in order for Kaminseti for us to predict them well, they have to have a meta that's perfect for them, and they have to be uncon. They have to play every single game utterly perfectly. And if any of those things aren't true, then we're not predicting them highly.
That's what's happened to Kaminseti at this point. Like
that is what's happened to them.
Yeah. Okay.
They need it's sad because no matter the meta, no matter what happened, it always they'll just be consistent. They'll get a top 5 and move on. That was always the conversation. They played the best one.
Yeah.
But I feel like now, as you said, like so many conditions have to be met. And to be fair, at this moment in time, with what we see, those conditions are met. You know, they are on con. It is a great meta for them. So even though after all this conversation, because I think we'll continue this conversation for the next matchup, the next playlist matchup, I would still go Kaminseti and Cherry, but I don't think it's definitely not clear cut at all.
I agree.
Okay, let's go through. Let's go put them through to the next round. It's fine. You're not going to miss much because the next round is Venovico Flixi. And though I think there's plenty of conversation to be had about them, it will not be had in this round against Sangilds, Jewel, and Tidy. So we'll put Venovico Flixi through. The next round, maybe we do need Reese back for this because this is a big one.
This is a banger.
Pink, Nebs, and Kiro versus Savage, Vidil, and Reason. I'm going to actually try zoom in here a bit more.
Yeah. I want to ask you what you think about Pink, Nebs, and Kira, because obviously you're good friends with Nebs. You probably not Neb, Pink. Sorry, you're good friend, both of them probably, but good friends with Pink. You've probably spoken to her a bit about this season. Like, how is he feeling going into it? Because obviously he had the split with Chino at the end of last season, where I was like, we're committing to Chino. We've got the trio. Pink, Nebs, Chino's the one, and they pick up Kira, a different dynamic, and it feels like they've kind of just got better after it.
I think they have gotten better. Funnily enough, I've actually not spoken to Pink as much about this season, to be fair.
Okay.
But let me see. I think he said a couple things to me in DMs. Let me read my DMs quickly.
Well, as you're scrolling through, I know he's feeling peak confidence because when I think after day 1 or day 2, when KXR did the drop map, he was just like, just put me dojo before he'd even played the heats. So obviously, at least coming into the group stage, he was max peaks confident. Still, I'm imagining he's going to carry that through into grands. And this season, they have looked way better than last season. And we always hyped them up, or not always. Last season, we hyped them up quite a lot coming into our predictions, from what I remember as well. And they hadn't even had that great of a season prior to that. So yeah, I think this is, I was going to say one of the best Pinks. Look, that can't be true because we were hyping them up so much last year a bunch as well. Savage Vidil, oh my god, I have no clue where I can place this team with the limited amount of stuff that we've seen from them so far.
Yeah, it's weird. Okay, so on Pink's team, I think they're better this season. I think the key problem they had last season was, they were trying to play Storm a bunch, right? And they weren't doing it well last season. They were able to recover their grands. From my memory of it, they were able to recover their grounds because in the last 2 or 3 games, they were like, you know what, let's just let Chino cook. And they just started fighting people and Chino was just cooking people. And then they, recover from there. I think one of the problems that they probably had was that Chino is not as experienced as Kiro. As much as Chino's amazing as a fragger and he's a top fighter, can't take that away from him. I think Kiro is a better grands player in that he's more ready for it. He doesn't need as much maybe babysitting. Kiro sort of knows what he needs to do. And Nebs is very similar. One thing I really like about them is when you have Nebs and Kiro, if those two are playing, at a top level, damage-wise, surge-wise, they're going to get you a tag out of thin air. They're going to get you something out of thin air, which I think definitely helps these guys. Especially because, when, in a lot of the games I've watched them, right, there'll be a lot of zones where they're actually one of the teams getting involved in some of the Magic Moss's nonsense, right? And so it's you just sort of sit out of the forest and you just have, fucking Kiro and Nebs there to just beam people who aren't even looking your way. You know, it's a nice sort of setup to have. Harry and I have always rated Pink very highly as an IGL. I'm probably a bit more biased because that's my mate, you know, but I think he knows what he's doing. And there feels like there's less pressure and expectation on them this season, which I also think helps. Like, I think now, because it's been quite a while since they've had a performance that's made people really like turn their heads, there's sort of a bit less pressure on them. I think as long as they stay on con at Demon's Dojo, which looks like will happen, I think they have, you know, a good grands. Like, I'd expect these guys to top 10. I could see them even stealing the global spot, depending on how the placements go.
What, it's 5 teams qual, so if, you know, Malibu's team and Vico's team are in that, it's top 7. That's pretty doable. I think a top 7.
I think them getting 7th I could see them getting 7th, you know.
But could you see Savage Vidil?
There's the conversation.
Because, you know,
I can also see Savage. That's the first thing we said on the pod. Remember we did the pod with Savage, and at the end of the pod we were saying, "Hey, these guys could get a top 7."
Yeah, looking at just without even looking at like this season, just looking at grands historically, like out of the list of these players, if you know, I would almost always go with, say, like Vidil and Reason's consistency in grands has been significantly better over the last few years than it would be with Pink, Nebs, Gear. Obviously, Savage has been a bit hit or miss as well. I think just historically, as a grands team, I would like easily Savage Vidil's.
Yeah, it has to be easily. 100%. If you're looking at historic grands results, I think it has to be. Yeah, but
it's like, you know, with such a short time period, obviously Vidil and Reason have played together so much, so they'll be confident. Vidil Savage has played together as well, so you know it meshes.
The problem. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
The problem that Mr. Savage are doing Reason will probably have is that obviously now, for people who don't know, they were landing Moss Meadows, but they've moved away now. They're going to be landing at the hill split that Venovi conflicts you were landing at in the group stage. There's a good chance one of the last chance qualifier teams tries to land at the south split, right? I don't know if they get that same respect, right? Because Venovi, because that spot, like the mountain and the split below, that's usually 2 spots. Like last season, we always talked about it as 2 spots. Most of the season, we've talked about it as 2 spots. In one of the EU groups, it was split as 2 spots. When you're Venovi Conflixi, you can claim the whole thing. I don't know if you can claim the whole thing when you're Mr. Savage or doing Reason. And so if a team lands to the south of them, which I think probably will happen with one of the last chance qualifier teams, you know, what does that look like? They've not played from that spot at all, you know. So now what does that look like?
Because if you look at every single, it was all of grands last season, it was 5 teams fighting at the base of that hill. You know, Mass Team, Canyon Team, the 2 teams there, the Dojo team runs in. Every single game, a cluster of like 3 to 5 teams, and it was just a total mess. No team was doing well out of that, like at all. No one rotated. Max zones, you've got everyone playing Storm. No one can get out, do anything. It was a mess. So if it is conned, I am definitely worried for them.
Yeah. But do you know what's so funny about you saying that quickly before you go, Harry? When you the way you set up that situation, does that not sound like every single grand Reason Vidil had last year, and then they still talk about everything?
Yeah, you're right.
Does that not sound exactly like every grand's last year?
Yeah.
So because this is what I was gonna say. Is like, you think we talked about Cami Sage, the conditions for them to do it, they have to play perfectly. I think if you think of Reason and Vidil, it's the opposite. You don't need them to have the perfect playstyle. You don't need them to have the perfect meta read. It's that individual skill that clutches them in so many different situations. That gets them points out of games that they get some points out of games that you'll never expect them to get points out of. For even with Savage as well. If you watch their game 1, right? That game 1, they were, I think, 60, 70 below Surge, rotating into 7th zone. And they get second that game. A lot of other teams are dying to Surge there, right? And that's the clutch factor. That's the individual raw talent that each player has, which can lead to them getting a much better place than we expect. However, this landing spot, I don't know if this is their landing spot. This is not, when I think of, as you said, Reason Vidil, you think of them landing a POI, quick loot, go Kia team, bang, all good. Not sat there looting 70 chests over 1,000 meters, then having to play surge bases on top of hills and rotate. Like, that's not what I see from them, right? And That's what I'm worried about. I actually think it's better if a team lands Southside. I think it's a team you can guarantee because number one, if they come through last chance, they're going to be worse. They're going to be a worse team. And number two, it's going to be guaranteed a team you can fight on dead side, isolated most of the time, depending if Mass Meadows gets involved. Depends if it's not. If it's more towards the maze, it's a problem. If it's more towards the actual South split and they just pad down, that's a little bit more isolated. Then I think that's better for them. That's actually just a better situation. And it's just the conflicting playstyles. You have Pink Nebs and Kira, who on paper, and you watch them, wow, they look a lot better, a lot cleaner, a lot more polished. Their end games probably aren't as good as they'd want. That's one thing I'd say about this weekend. Their end games were a little bit worse than I'd expect. They got made every end game, but it wasn't like they're getting top 3s, top 2s. They were getting, I think, 1 top 5 and the rest were top 10, right? They weren't getting deep into end games. But Savage, Reason, and Vidil, they will just have those pop-off games. They'll have that 15-kill win or that 15-kill second where they're just below Surge, kill a trio, then they're Scuff, kill another trio, and then they got 12 kills going into like third moving. This is the hardest one by far for me. This is literally just...
I started off wanting to put Pink Nebs and Kira through. I think
Same.
I've deluded myself into putting Savage, Vidil, and Reason through.
We're just going to get them through on vibes to win the whole thing at this point, I think.
Let's just do it.
I don't know if I put them through, but the only reason I say this, I think the ceiling, if everything comes together, Savage, Vidil, and Reason is higher, but the floor is also lower, like a lot.
Yeah,
I could see them getting a 20th, and I wouldn't be that shocked. I would just be like, oh, they just came together. But if Pink Nebs and Kira got a 20th, I would be mind blown, to be honest. But if they got a second, I would also be mind blown. So
that's fair. I think that's fair.
Put Savage through.
All right. Bloody hell, that was a really hard one. Let us know in the comment section below. Who you obviously there's gonna be a lot of fans who are, in favor of Savage. But generally, like, give us your unbiased opinion of those two teams. Who you think places higher in the comments below. Chap, Teeny, and Scavi versus Vanya, Marius, and Pixie as our next matchup here.
Put them through.
I love Chap and Teeny, but sorry, boys. Bye-bye.
It was a good run. Good luck off spawn. Two former teammates here.
I don't think I should work on this one. I don't like it. Yeah, I don't think.
This next matchup is the Coach Harry Derby. We have
I think only Harry should talk about it.
Thomas, Upple, and Panzer versus Queasy, Swizzy, and Mustache. Who places higher? I think we all have our clear answer.
Yeah.
So, I don't think this needs to be much of a debate, but the other team I'm a big fan of.
Yeah. So I want your such a
really good analysis there, Levin. I'm so glad you made it.
I just don't want to say the names.
Crazy is the better trio. And you're about to say, no, obviously not. No, they are the better trio. Crazy is the better. Yeah, they are the better trio. They've been together longer. They were probably the best trio last season as well, but they obviously contested, but that's something we'll never know. We're talking about Camiseti and Chari or Camiseti specifically, as I was saying. They're just guaranteed fifth. You go into a grand, they're getting top 5. That to me is now Thomas, Upple, and Panzer. I think their variance of placement is literally 5th to 3rd. I think that is just where they're placing. They're just somewhere in there, guaranteed. Because I don't think they're really ever going to die to Surge. The end games might not be as clean. They're just making every single end game. Thomas with the drum gun. It looks like he's aimbotting. That gun, how it's in competitive, I'll never know. But it literally looks like he's aimbotting.
So I've not used the Mythic drum gun in game. Am I missing something?
You are.
Is it different? Like,
it's
in terms of when
good.
You shoot it, but no, because there was a moment in Group 3 where he's in a Surge base miles away from somebody, and he goes dink, 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 headshot. Like, it was just like triple headshot, dink, 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 and he's just like tapping it, and I'm like, is he using a drum gun to do that? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, it has perfect accuracy on ADS, pretty much, outside of the recoil.
Bro.
Which for a drum gun, the fire rate is just crazy. I did hear, I don't know how much this is waffle or not. Yesterday on Savage's stream, I did hear Vino say, I'm going to key in that drum gun, like we're getting it off spawn and not getting it to Thomas. And I just sat.
Yeah, I don't know how
that. Like, you have to land on it in order to get that.
So I remember
over there.
Oh god, I remember that actually in the Div Cup finals that Vino landed Uncon and Thomas was Uncon. They were triple stacking the gas station Vino Vika Flixie, or double stacking it. They were actually, I remember this. I think Thomas tweeted it saying like, "Hey, if anyone wants Mass Meadows Uncon, they're literally double stacking the gas station. Come and help out."
That's insane. That's actually insane.
So maybe something like that does happen. But if they do just get Drum Gun Uncon, I could not see them placing out. I think, to me, they're a lock for globals. Like, I've been very impressed with. Specifically, Thomas just played out of his mind this weekend. Honestly, it was just unbelievable.
Every single time the observers went to him, he was just melting somebody with the drum gun. Like, it was disgusting.
Yeah, I think, like, even if you remove the drum gun from the equation, though, like, sure, they might get a little less surge, but I'm not concerned about that whatsoever with this team. Like, you know, you give Thomas any other good AR, and it's not going to be the same because it's not a mythic drum gun, obviously, but like, I have literally zero doubts about Thomas's team, which is interesting when you really think about like Uppel and Panzer as teammates who are just new to the scene really this year almost. Like, we weren't talking about either of these two players up until this year, and now we're just saying, yeah, these guys are locked top 5.
Yeah. It's funny. It's funny because you literally have Thomas, the best Surge aim player, and then you have Panzer, the best from last season's Surge aim, like Surge damage players. Like, how can they die to Surge? Impossible when they're trading with like 3 teams around them. Like, it's just going to be insane.
Excited for that team. Unfortunate matchup here in the round of 16. This is definitely a quarterfinals level team, if not semifinals level team. All right, into the quarterfinals of our bracket. How's it looking so far? You guys somewhat happy?
Happy. I mean, it's looking good.
Okay, all right. Let's not talk too soon because this always goes wrong. Our first matchup of the semifinals, the quarterfinals. Sorry, we have Pingwox and Malabuka versus iDrop, Sky, and Scroll.
So to me, Pingwox and Malabuka this weekend in Heats probably came out of the tier 1 trios as looking the weakest, unfortunately. Like, it felt like they didn't exactly know how they wanted to play Surge. Some games they'd be on Lone Wolf and then die to Surge. Some games they keyed Magic Monsters and one of them would die, or they die in Lone Wolf. It's like, it felt like it was chaotic. It felt like they were doing things randomly. I'm watching one game they're in Storm 6th zone, trying to do a 6th zone Queasy Storm rotate. The next game I'm seeing them just white lining, trying to get a more central position. It's like, I feel like they were trying to problem solve on the fly, which is never a good thing. And when you're coming 10th overall, it's not an insane performance where you're like, wow, they really showed why they're the best team, landing at probably the best or second best spot on the map. And compare it to how you watch, Clicks play from Lone Wolf, it felt like night and day, to be honest. It didn't feel the consistency, the domination. It didn't feel like that at all.
Both of those teams barely made it into the finals through groups, to be fair. So maybe Lone Wolf's not as good, eh?
Maybe it's actually a shit, but...
the draw slot's just crap now. That's it, clearly. Yeah. But I think as much as that wasn't the best performance from them, their other performances have just been unreal, Yeah. It's like they are undoubtedly a better team than iDrop, Sky, and Scroll.
Yes.
I don't think there's even much of a conversation on that.
Okay.
I think I'm not going to say they are better, but I think they will place quite close together in Grand Final. I wouldn't be shocked if they place quite close based off what I've seen so far. But I understand why Pingwox or Malabuka are better team.
The one thing I will say that definitely feels different to me about Pingwox and Malabuka this season to last season, the way they played Night Shift was like the blueprint to play it. Like, they had it locked. Like, and so when you're talking about them looking like they're figuring things out on the fly, that is a very different, contrast to last season. Obviously in NA, the team that ended up winning was Acorn's trio, right? And they landed Night Shift. Like, and those guys were watching Malabuka to see how they were playing it at times because they were playing it so well, right? So, that definitely is different, and maybe that hurts them going into Grands. We will see. We have another Polish matchup here. We have Demus, Pix, and Dam, the new Polish studs, versus Kamiseti plus Chari. Kamiseti being the old Polish studs.
Yeah.
Who will be the new Polish powerhouses of EU? This is...
Yeah.
To make a WWE comparison, this is once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
John
This
Cena
is-
versus The Rock.
Everyone obviously it's a lazy comparison to say Demus Pix and Dom are the same as Kami, Seti, and Chari. They're the new obviously completely different play styles. But I do think this is the passing of the torch. I do think this is the Demus Pix and Dom will outplace Kami, Seti, and Chari. I think we've talked about it a lot. We talked about how the conditions that Kami, Seti, Chari have to have a good grand. They could still be in contention to win. I believe that Demus, Pix, and Dom are in contention to win. They've got their landing spot. It's been super clean. They've got contested magic mosses, which you're saying is the only downside of the games they do pass, where they're dying to magic mosses, and that's contested. So that's like one of their main weak points gone. I can maybe because now there's pressure. Now they might feel that, oh, we actually do have to perform in comparison to last season where they're coming in as underdogs, and it might be a different sort of feeling. Everything I'm seeing just tells me Demus, Pix, and Dom will outplace Kami, Seti, and Chari.
I gotta agree, man. I know Levin's so much on the Kami, Seti, Harry train, but my faith right now feels stronger with Pix, Dom, and Demush than with Kami, Seti, Harry. You know, I've been hurt before with Kami, Seti, Harry now over the last like how many of these pods have we done where we're like, yeah, top 5 is gonna happen, and then it's not. So as much as we can bring the hype analysis on them, my heart says to go with Demush.
Yeah. Levin, what are you thinking? Are you in disbelief?
Head down, eyes up.
Yeah.
I think everything you guys are saying is fair. Like on the balance of things. Like
so
when you look at how this played out, I think you have to put through Demus.
Okay.
Like so just based off of like the balance of results, recent results, somewhat of how things have gone this season. To be fair, in Div Cups, I've been more impressed by Kami, Seti, and Harry in Div Cups than I have with Demus, Pix, and Dom. But going into Grands, I think the setup for those guys that pumped is really good.
It would be disappointing if Demush's team didn't do good this season in Grands, though, because like they were the new kids on the block. If they flopped, it would be such a disappointment, you know. No pressure.
Yeah,
it would.
The problem is, though, is I'm thinking about it.
The more I think about it, I can see a world where they just get like a 12th and Demus, Pix, and Dom, and it's just not quite as good. Because I'm on the hype train. I've been on the hype train.
You've been. You started the track. You are the conductor. You're the main conductor.
But I can see a world where it does go poorly, but I've seen it go poorly for Kami, Seti, Chari. I've seen it happen. I've seen it uncontested. This meta, if it's not this season for Kami, Seti, Harry, like I don't know what season it will be. But sometimes you just got to go with your gut instinct, and I'm just going with Demus, Pix, and Dom.
So what was running through my head was like they did incredibly. Major 1.
Yeah.
Broke the record for a new trio. All of them playing in their first Grands. Like they played incredibly. And my mind is like, that can't happen again. For a
They're not a new team
trio.
anymore.
The problem is that when my mind is rushing that way, my mind is also telling me, but what happened to Chap last year? When he came second, everyone was like, okay, well, you can't do that again. You know, so that was a crazy thing, but like now just you level out back to the north, and he went and did it again. And I could see a world where Demus, Pix, and Dom are the team that goes and does it again, and they are contending again in the final. So I feel good about putting them through. I feel good about putting either team through just because Polish fans can't hate us either way. I think Polish fans do they love Demus, Pix, and Dom as like almost as much as they love Kami, Seti, or they're not there yet? Do they need an FNCS win?
At some point they would.
They're not there yet, but eventually they will be. They need an FNCS win, and then they'll get there, I reckon.
Yeah, I had like many comments on the video I did about Demush. Say to everyone telling me how wrong I was for saying his name is Demus when it's
is it Demush?
It's meant to be like
Demush.
I think it's like Demush. I can't say it right though. So Now, if someone will say it down below phonetically in the comments, I'm sure, but I think
Let
it's
us
more
know.
Dibush.
Same with Chari. I'm Chari being Harry, but I just keep saying Chari.
People kept getting mad at me for saying Chari, but it's like it's just
it's
like,
ingrained at this point.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like it'll come. All right, cool. On to the next round. Venovico Flixi versus Savage Vidal Reason. This is just hard because it's just the reigning champs. And even though they've maybe not looked as potent as they did at times last season, I think most people would think these guys place higher than Savage Vidal. That's not really.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah. The hype train or
the
the
storyline
vibes
though.
are over. Yeah.
The hype train ran out of coal.
Yeah, it ran
out. Yeah, they ran out of steam. But look, I want to see these guys call for globals, man. That'd be unreal. Okay, our final quarterfinal matchup: Vanya Marius Pixie versus Queasy Swizzy Mustache.
I'm just fully on the Queasy hype train. So you know, as much as Vanya's team has been amazing and done so well this season and every season or last season as well, you know, it's like they are an undoubtedly top. Would I say top 3? Am I going to guarantee them top 3? I mean, they were third last year. You know, it's like Queasy's team. Surely Queasy's team is the best pick to win. Full stop.
Yeah,
so,
I would agree. I think there's a funny trend with Vanyak that in finals that Queasy isn't in, he dominates. He does really well. He's on height all the time, and it literally is like if you go through. There's the Div Cup finals they won this season. Queasy didn't make it. There's an eval they won a game. Queasy wasn't in it. It's like every single time that Queasy doesn't make finals and isn't playing height, Vanyak's there. So if Queasy does have a bad weekend, Vanyak will just be able to get height more consistently, will be able to play for the early height, and will get a lot of wins like they did last season when Queasy was contested off spawn as well, right? So,
but do you seriously believe Queasy's having a bad weekend?
No. So moving through, so moving through, but I'm just saying it because I think people are really expecting Vanya, Marius, and Pixie to perform like insanely well. I still think they will do well, but there are scenarios where they do underperform, and it feels like an end game if they don't have height early. It is nowhere near as clean.
I think that's fair. Let's get to the semifinals because there's plenty to say about how good Queasy's trio is. Vanya's team, though, solid. They've had a better. I don't know if they've had a better season than last season, but in terms of like the group stage phase of it, has been cleaner than it was last season, obviously, because last season they were playing in last chance qualifier.
No,
they're
so that's a solid team. They're solid.
Yeah. Their last Div Cups last season were like 3rd, 14th, 3rd, 19th, 2nd. So like they've had some really good. And this season's been 4th, 15th, 1st, 12th. So there's like, they've had like the same amount of top 5s, really. But the same. Actually, it's the same.
Yeah. All right, into the semifinals then, and we have 4 teams left. One of these teams we will choose as our EU winner. The first semifinal matchup is Ping, Wox, and Malabuka versus Dimush, Pix, and Dom.
I can't go first on this. I just can't because I need someone to persuade me otherwise from what I'm thinking. So,
Reese, how you feeling?
I'm on that fucking hype train, baby.
Oh, just book a ticket to fucking Krakow or whatever, mate. Go to fucking Gdansk, mate. You guys are just fucking on this Polish new era hype train, I guess.
No, in all honesty, I see Malabuka's team doing better than Pixstar and Dimush. Like, just historically, I just don't see like we said, we've had one iffy tournament from Malabuka's team in groups, and obviously they just slithered through. But kind of similar to Vanya's team last season, that doesn't mean you're not a top contender in grands whatsoever. So yeah, I've got to put Malabuka's team through on consistency.
What major did Ping and Wox qualify to globals last year? I forgot.
3. They landed Underworld. They were like came from Underworld, I'm pretty sure.
Because one thing that will be interesting for me to see this year with them is, last year Malabuka qualified for globals in Major 1. And the rest of the year, he was landing at the best POI every season in EU. and performed not up to scratch.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I wonder if we're going to see a similar pattern where they're quals, they're landing at good POIs, but it's just not up to scratch.
I mean,
Yeah,
they're
they're
not
just
up to
taking a
scratch.
break.
They're still a 6th and a 4th.
Yeah.
Obviously, but
Yeah. Landing
Which-
grim and
yeah,
red line.
yeah. I was about to say,
You know?
obviously,
It's not even just
You
like
watch
best
Peter
POI.
Bot.
It's grim and
but
red.
it is an
and that's-
underperformance. But at the same
that's what
time,
made it
it's,
worse.
you know, is that going to be worse than what we think Pix, Dimash, and Dharma are going to do?
Yeah. If they
But
if
even
they
if
got
they underperform, they're still top 5-ish. So
I just look. Okay, I'm trying. So I do agree that I think that if you're just going historic,
you think Dimash, Pix, and Dom are going to come second then this FNCS, don't you? Just say you think they're going to come second.
I think they'll probably come third, maybe second.
Okay.
Yeah. I haven't done my full list. I need to like go through and have a proper look, but I think they'll come
Okay.
second or third. Yeah. My
Okay.
worry with Dimash, Pix, and Dom was last season in Grands. I need to double check this, but I'm fairly certain their last 2 games when they were like 40, 50 points off first going into the last 2 games, and they just got back-to-back 0-point games. And I don't know if that's just unlucky because I didn't watch it from their perspective, or if that's the pressure. You know, you're now in. It's different being in just playing a grand finals to you're now in contention to win the grand finals. You're now actually in that moment where each mistake you make or each decision could be the difference between winning and not. That is the difference. With Pingwox and Malabuka, when like they're adapting and like on the fly figure things out, right? It does feel like they maybe are taking a breather this season, like more relaxed. They were contested at Lone Wolf for a bit. Now they're on Con again. Like it was a bit of a chaotic time. But off the balance of things, like the safer bet is just to go Pingwox and Malabuka. I could never see them placing outside of top 10. I don't even think I could really see them placing outside like top 7. Like it will go to 7.
I agree. Yeah, they will be top 7 for sure.
So then for that reason, I can see a world where Dimash, Pix, and Dom do somehow dud or don't have the most insane day. So I would go Pingwox and Malabuka as a will place high, just on the basis I think there's just a lot more. I just don't think they're going to full dud. Like you said, Reese, even though they dudded and underperformed, it's a 4th and a 6th. That's like, if they come 4th this season, there's, I mean, Dimash have to play incredibly well to outplace them, you know. A 4th is a dud for one team and a 4th for another team's an insane placement. So I'll go Pingwox and Malabuka to go through.
I can get behind that.
Yeah.
I can get behind that. I have, the more you guys talk about Dimash, Pix, and Dom, the more I'm fear they are going to do really badly.
The more I'm talking about it, the more I'm seeing the scenarios that happen, whether they just the pressure or when they go key Magic Mosses, it doesn't quite work out, or because these teams might run into each other a lot on Magic Mosses Vault, Black Market. This might happen where these 2 teams are keying each other a lot. And I mean,
that is what I think is going to happen. Yeah.
I know who I put my money on, which would be Malabuka, Watson, Ping to win that fight.
Yeah. So. I think the part of why I'm a bit jaded is because these guys are like really good fighters, right? It's not like back in the day when like we say Polish players just are useless in fights. But like, I feel like I have seen them get pushed to the side a bit too much in fights in Magic Mosses for me to feel like as ironclad about their chances. Like I could see a world where like day 2, like they might go into day 2 in like 2nd or 3rd, even in 1st. I could see them leading after day 1, but then it's like you just have a couple games day 2 that, because that's always the thing about Grands that's so hard to even predict, like how the lobby changes day 2.
How people play.
How people play can change it. Like they might get like, you know, there was a lot of games I saw from Pink's team, right, where Kiro is like super aggro, just up on the hill, just tagging them into the POI if they're too slow to loot. And it's like there might be a world where Pink's team doesn't do as good day 1, so day 2 they're just way more aggro onto pumped. You know, there might be a world where like the off-spawn fights at Magic are just like stalemated, and so they get sucked into it, and so it's just like a freeway. And then like you have Malabuka's team rotating in it. Like there's just so many things that I could see just not quite going right, you know, on day 2 that could just be problematic for them. Whereas like Malabuka, Ping, and Wox, I just feel confident that they top 5. regardless. You know, I might be a bit upset with the top 5 because I'm like, oh, it's a bit boring, but I'm sure they'll top 5.
No, I agreed. 100% agreed.
Let's put them
But
through as our
but
first
my own
finalists.
prediction, I will put them in like 3rd or 2nd team. It's just,
I think that's valid.
Yeah.
No, I think that's valid. I think that's fair. I think that's totally fair. All right. The matchup that sparked some FNtasia beef this season. We had both of them on the podcast as interviews. We have Veno's trio versus Queasy's trio. Who will place higher in the Major 2 finals?
I'm a Queasy man. I said it earlier. I think I'm sticking with them. They've looked more solid. They look like one of the best teams last season, if not the best team. As we've already said, they were conned. Game plan looks almost too easy every single game for the most part. They seem to have it figured out. They can play Storm if they want to. They can play zones they get if they want to. Far zones seem fine. Close zones seem fine. Becoming a Flexi just seem... Obviously, I'd probably put them 2nd overall, quite frankly. But if I was just going to pick a team that just looked more solid, more consistent, I've just got to go with Queasy's.
Yeah, agreed. I think if you think about Veno's season this season, you know, you go from Flooded to Crime City to Mass Meadows to Lone Wolf to the split to
Shitty Bomb split.
Yeah, to whatever Hill split to Mass Meadows. It's like if you're changing this spot this consistently, you're not going to be as prepared as a team who's landed to the same spot for 2 seasons. You're not going to have the same like game plan. You're not going to understand exactly what to do in every single situation because you haven't played every single set lobby uncontested, contested, or played scrims when you're uncontested, testing things out because you're testing things out for loads of different landing spots, right? And I think when it comes to Queasy, Swizzy, and Mustache, it looks so easy. It just does. Like guaranteed, you know, easy. They're going to go make either the Swizzy ramp or the Mustache is going to have a surge base. They're going to trade with either Shining Span or they're going to trade with Thomas in his split. And I just think it's just guaranteed they're going to be able to get surge, play Storm. The only worry they could have is that everyone else starts playing Storm and it becomes a grief fest. You know, the whole last season in Globals where you saw everyone start playing Storm in Globals and it was like, now teams are fighting in Storm because it's now everyone started playing Storm. And I think if you watched Heats, there was a lot of games where more teams were in Storm than were out of Storm.
Yeah, there was a lot of that.
So that's also like bad Storm play for the most part.
Yeah, of course.
Most of Queasy, if you watch like the actual paths, they take their like all that bad Storm play, quote unquote, is usually in congested areas, like just behind where zone is pulled away from. That is not how most of the time Queasy's team ends up rotating through it. They go wide round to avoid that intentionally. So it's like, even if a bunch of people playing Storm, I'm not too worried. And that might just be free surge.
And at times last season, there was like bad Storm play that they got involved in and they were perfectly fine maneuvering around it.
Yeah. No, but they've been the best team this season. They just have. They've been the best team this season. They're the team with the least amount of variables that could go wrong. The only scenario that it goes wrong is if Mumsy qualifies through last chance and contest them again. Because if you look at that map, where else are they landing? Like if Skyjump or Mumsy qualify and they look at that map, there's nowhere else to go. They actually are probably going to get contested again.
That would be crazy. But your final thought then on them?
Oh yeah, put a Queasy through for sure. Like I think Queasy, final thoughts, they are just I think they're the best team in the EU right now. Put them through. Veno, Fico, Flixie. I don't even know. Like, it's so hard to say anything because you're just going off last season, but this season is just, they're changing everything. They're dying to surge in heats. Then they're just keying teams. But then, like, if we're going back to last rounds when they keyed teams, it wasn't as good because they just weren't getting in properly. I still think they're going to top 4, but I don't know. Like, they are, to me, they're the, I could see them winning. I could see them coming 8th, and I wouldn't be surprised with either outcome.
I think Queasy prophesied it on the pod this season. This is not quite their season. And, you know, you can say sort of whatever about it, but all you have to do is look at what they have done in moving around constantly, different drop slots. They are trying to figure out how they want to play this season.
And I thought you meant Queasy said that it wasn't his season. I was like, what?
No.
Seems like it's his season to me. Yeah.
What Queasy said about Veno trio, right? Because on the pod he said about Veno's trio, he was like, Those guys, I don't think this season is their season. I don't think this meta suits them. I don't think they know how to play this season. And the constant moving around from spot to spot would only support that.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because I think them moving back to Mast to me is very much like, okay, we've landed all these different spots. I think this is the one that makes the most sense in terms of like, you know, like it's almost like you've tested all the different ones and it's like, all right, we've tested them now. All right, let's go with this one. You know, like this one I think is the one that makes the most sense for what we want to do. Reese said he's a queasy man. Harry said he's a queasy man. I am a queasy man. This team last season, we finished the season, and I remember us on the pod all agreeing they're the second best team in the EU, definitely.
Yeah.
Right. The team we all thought was the best team in the EU looks worse this season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
While those guys have continued to be as good.
Yeah.
These guys are the best team this season. And like you rightfully highlighted, Harry, there's just not too many variables there. It's funny because as this pod releases, as a lot of people are listening to the pod, you know, the pod's going to come out on Wednesday, you know, so a lot of people are listening on Wednesday evening / Thursday. Mumsy's team might, you know, like who knows?
They might.
Like that would be hilarious if we've done all this and then those guys caught in their con again. But yeah, Queasy Suzy Mustache to me are the best team. And so without too much jargon, the final matchup, Ping Wox Malabuka versus Queasy Suzy Mustache. I think we'd all agree.
Yeah.
Queasy is our winner.
Yeah.
Queasy is our
Sure.
winner.
When FNtasia Twitter tweets either the clip or the screenshot of our full bracket, he's going to humble gimmick on it. Oh, no, guys, I'm not going to win. No.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Of
Drop that
course.
shit. Drop that
He's
shit.
like-
We already know what's happening.
Do you know what he's
Like,
going to do?
haven't you seen Thomas with the drum gun and Mass Meadows with the everything? It's like
My prediction is he's going to do what he did on the pod. He's going to say, what Cammy say? Hurry, Uncon. Like, come on. But they have to win. It can't be us. Like, they have to win Uncon from their spot. That's
we need more scuff teams to our north, guys.
yeah.
Here's the bracket in full. It's a bit, I don't know how zoomed out it is for people watching, but yeah, it might be too zoomed
mobile,
out.
maybe wraps.
If you're watching the pod on mobile, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
For one. But yeah. All right. On to NA.
Bye.
So over here on NA, we are going to be doing the exact same thing. And I know a lot of our NA audience feels like we are way too EU focused, too much bias against NA. And so I've decided to change all of that. We're gonna change all of that. We've brought in 3 North Americans. I am outnumbered for one on the podcast when it comes to NA and that dynamic. And we have the wonderful Teddy who joins us again. Hello, Teddy. Welcome
Hello.
back.
This is like a roller coaster of emotions for the fans because last week you said the podcast was over. Levin.
It is over.
Now you're basically giving 2 podcasts to the people. So we're so back. It was over. Now we are so back.
Well, it is over. It's just we have like contractually like a couple more eps we have to do. So like after a couple more eps, like it is done. But yeah, it is over. We have Kdog joining us again, fan favorite.
Yes, sir. Thank you for welcoming me back. I mean, glad to bring some unbiased NA insight here.
Twitter doesn't say you're unbiased. They say you're very biased whenever I'm on Twitter. So I don't know about unbiased, man.
And I think we got to talk about the face of EU at some point with Kdog here.
That's a conversation. And making his FNtasia debut, we have someone who, if you're locked into NA, you would have definitely seen him over the years. The one and only T Church joins the podcast. How you doing, brother?
Oh, I'm good, man. Thank you. Number one, thank you for having me, Levin. Been a huge fan of the podcast. I've actually learned a lot from the podcast. I love listening to the players talk. And so I know that episodes you've done with like Queasy, Vino, and different guys like that have been really helpful for me personally, especially, getting back into the swing of things. But I'm just super excited to be here today and be able to share a little bit of my knowledge, man.
Well, don't get too excited because the bracket is rough. And, the bracket you can come into it. I've gone into many bracket apps excited and I've left like, whoa. I've actually had to, the time's different now from EU to NA. That's how I felt at the end of the EU one. So like, it's going to be very funny for listeners because my energy now is just very different to my energy by the end of that EU one. But it's fine. We have the NA bracket. We have NA finals, of course. We have 3 teams still from last chance qualifier who are not in yet. But if we take a look at the map so far, we have a bunch of different spawn battles. But the great thing, similar to EU at least so far, is a lot of the best teams, a lot of the teams I think people would be expecting to qualify for globals this season are uncontested and do have a chance to play out from their spots. Of course, things will change as we get the 3 last chance qualifier teams, but I think we should just get right into it. Let's get right into the bracket. I
did have one big picture thought on NA.
Okay.
There's kind of 7 teams. We'll call them the Magnificent 7. If you're into the stock market, that's the Magnificent 7. You'd know that term in NA. What I'm really curious to see in this discussion, but also in this grand finals, is someone crushing that party. Are we going to get a new team in that upper caliber of the region, or are we just going to have the same? Well, really 2-3 teams, and then 4, 5, 6, 7. They're basically going to be the same season over season, and you can pencil in the same names season over season. Let's see, can we get some new blood in the top of the leaderboard?
Yeah, I'm curious about that as well, because I always call NA the top heavy region. When you look at that top 7, the magnificent top 7, it's amazing. And I'm very curious to see how all of you guys find them stacking up against each other this season in particular. But there's always room, I think, for new teams to sort of shine through. I'm looking at some of the names on the bracket already, and I'm like, I ain't got a Scooby-Doo. But this is the brilliant part about it. I can just go full host mode. I'm the host. I got 3 NA people here. You deal with it. You shit on NA, not me. I'll leave all the shitting on NA to you guys. We started at the top on EU, so I'm gonna reverse it. We're gonna start at the bottom here. So we're gonna start our first matchup in the round of 32. We have Clicks, Higgs, and Yomzo versus Catman, Amplify, and Lozalo or Lozab. I'm sorry. I think we all know who's going through here.
Uncon layer. I mean,
yeah.
Not much
Catman.
Not much discussion. None at all.
Yeah. Next matchup, straight into an off-spawn battle. We have off-spawn battle over at Magic Mosses. We have Noah W plays his trio against Fusiax trio. 2 teams I'm actually a big fan of, to be honest. Like, I'm a big fan of Fusiax. I love watching his streams. He's great. And Noah plays, they were fantastic, in the group stage. Like, they looked like a legit good team.
Played really great.
The battle of the creators right here.
This one's
actually going to do numbers.
This one's actually a little bit personal for me, actually, because of Kdog. So Kdog there on Fusiax team was the first player I ever coached. And I actually met him through a scrim server that I was in when he was like 8 or 10K PR back in chapter 3. So I love that team. I'm a huge fan of that team. But if we're talking brackets here and we're talking experience, Noah and Chaos have way more.
Yeah. What's this? Fusiax's first grands, right? Or has he been in grands before? I think this is his first, right?
I believe it's his first.
Yeah.
Is this his first grands?
Yeah.
Bloody hell. Oh, that's news to me.
No. I believe he made one back in. I remember him landing the lab in chapter 4.
I think it's his
one
first.
Of the grands there.
It seems like Levin's fact checking. So Chaos,
this
is his 5th or 6th, right? So, and he's I think most of the time been in the bottom half of the leaderboard. So if we put him through, I'm really curious to see if they can, get top half of the leaderboard, be a threat for a top 10. But if they're contested, probably not, right?
Yeah, I was going to say I think it's a long shot being contested and being contested at Magic Meadows as well. Or Magic Mosses. I'm sorry. Because that area is it's pretty bad for loot. I'm not gonna lie.
It's a magnet, right? Because if these guys don't finish quickly, you are just going to have a bunch of people rotating in because of that black market, and so it can sort of become like a bit of a clusterfuck. With that being said, done. Who are we moving through between these two teams? What's the instincts here? Because I actually don't know their Osborne history. I don't know if they've been fighting against each other this season. But where's the gut feelings at with these two teams?
What do you think, Kdog?
I'm leaning more towards Noah, Chaos, and Kaz here. I think
they looked really good.
Yeah,
in groups.
Yeah,
they did look really good in groups. So I'm gonna go with the Kdog core here.
But it sounds like there's going to be some chaos up spawn.
On that one.
Okay, that's fine. On to our next matchup. We have Aoxy, Jojo, Pix, and they are going up against Aviv, Skittles, and Chimp. How are we feeling?
I mean, Aviv, Skittles, and Chimp, they're a really good trio, but they're also really inconsistent at the same time. Like, I like the potential of the team. Their drop spot is it's all right. I have to say, wait, where is Aoxy at? Aoxy,
they're literally just south of them. They're landing that.
Oh, I see them. Yeah,
between
right.
Shoguns and that one.
Okay. Okay, so both uncontested. I mean, I just like the caliber of players better on Aviv, Skittles, and Chimp. But I mean,
yeah, Skittles is always good for a good off FNCS placement that you weren't really expecting. It's funny because obviously they were in like the same group as Pete, but I reckon in like a group stage format like that where wins on the line, they're like the most guaranteed safe gonna win a game team.
Yeah.
Like you just know they're gonna win it. Like Skittles is gonna pull a win out of his ass somewhere, you know.
Yeah.
I would say these guys are probably the team that most people would put through here.
They won game one of the group.
But shout out to it. Aoxy and Jojo, they played really well in group stage. They won a game. They looked really good. So if they're ultimately not going through, I actually think this is one of the stronger first round matchups on the board, just looking across it in terms of two pretty good teams.
So it isn't just the caliber of players that I'd be looking at here. I'd also be looking at like mobility options and then like materials as well. Like I'm not sure Aoxy, Jojo, and Peaks ever get cap metal, whereas like Aviv, Skittles, and Chimp, they have the court to the north that has a bunch of metal there, and then they also have a couple of geysers that are going to help them get to good positions for surge and whatnot before a lot of other teams. So Oasis is actually one of the more underrated drops this season, in my opinion, just because of the fact that you do have those geysers and a lot of really nice hills around you to look at the entirety of this area. So yeah, for those two reasons, I would definitely go with the Aviv, Skittles, Chimp on that round.
Yeah, and I feel like Aoxy and when you're landing south of Crime City, you are putting yourself at risk of being Peterbot fodder.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's always going to be the problem. You know, you're putting yourself at risk there. But I actually do think you're right, Teddy. I think that's a harsh first round matchup for them because they are not, a bad team by any regards. Next matchup, we have 20's trio up against Rise's trio. Muzz, Rise, and Yapko back together this season in Grands. They're landing at Shiny. Sorry. How are we feeling? I think we're putting them through, right? I think most.
This one's pretty cut and dry in my opinion. Most Rise Yapko being at a drop like Shiny and being uncontested. If they finished outside the top 5 in Grands, I'd be shocked.
Yeah.
I know we don't want to recap group stage, but I do want to say the most group stage thing happened on Muzz's win when he had to go 1v1 for the win against Mommy's Good Boy. And he won.
Against who, Teddy? Can you just remind us again? Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. I just wanted to...
the player was called Mommy's Good Boy. And then the very next game, he was user dash, a random string of numbers. So that's a very Fortnite group stage moment, and hopefully it's one Muzz doesn't soon forget.
Yeah, unreal.
Moderation team was on top of that one for sure.
I swear we don't get crazy names like that in EU anymore. NA gets all the cool dumb names, which I am jealous of, to be honest. All right, next round. Oh,
This is a heavy hitter matchup, and this one's hard. This is
a setup. I think Clutch set this up. We have Reitz, Cooper, and Curly versus Bucky, Okis, and Cam. That is a nasty first round matchup. I'll just say it. That's nasty.
This is a second or third round matchup, man, because they're both uncontested, both at fantastic drop spots. The edge for me here, I think, is to be honest with you, Cooper and Curly both being on mouse and keyboard, and then Okis and Cam both being on controller is a bit of a question mark for me as far as Storm Surge and stuff like that goes in these lobbies. I know they got Drum Gun, but how consistently are you going to be able to get above your surge thresholds that you need to, when you're playing with two controller players?
They have two. Bucky's trio has two contested teams next to them, adjacent to them. They're going to have to be pushing those pretty aggressively.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if they get a zone that pulls max distance to the west, it could be looking very, very scary for them, unless they have, some strategies to deal with zone, and to get into the good positions that way. But me personally, I'm taking Reet, Cooper, Curly off of inputs and experience, to be honest with you, because I don't think Bucky has as much recent experience as that team either.
Kdog, how you feeling about this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think not to put too much weight on the group stages, but definitely in the groups, Bucky trio was one of the most surprising teams to me out of any of the groups. I really liked the way that they played in it. Their first two games were kind of rough, and then after that, they really impressed me. But I think I agree with everything that Teacher said. I gotta go with the more in my opinion, I just feel like Reed, Cooper, and Curly are still just a better trio at the end of the day.
I was. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What a gentleman. I was going to say, I feel like Curly is a player who last season impressed me quite a bit. And I sort of saw as a kind of player who could push up into, getting some better teammates potentially and playing with some of the better players. And he got opportunities this season, but obviously it didn't quite work out. And then obviously when you have Cooper and Reed, you guys highlighted the experience there. The one thing I will say, and I'm glad you mentioned it, Kdog, because I was going to get to it. I was really impressed by Bucky's trio in groups. And I went back and watched some of the games and the way they play for Surge. And I get the concerns for them, obviously, when you have double controller, especially when it's quite a Surge tradey heavy meta, right? And from so far, at least we've seen people setting bases. But from that split, when you're playing at the Rolling Blossom split, you have so many options of teams, and there was a lot of games I saw them where they position themselves perfectly to where they are in the center, and it's 5 teams around them, and they can just look any direction, and it's really good. You're obviously looking at Seaport, you can look at the Foxglove team, you can look at the team below from Masters, the other hopeful team, and whoever that comes in as well and rotates in. But like you said, when you have teams fighting off spawn near them, and what we saw from last Grands is that it is very surge trading in those areas. A lot of the time, it actually breaks out into fights. So them being double controller might not hurt them as much in some of the Grands games, because it is going to be a matter of people just rotating into fights and some of those POIs and some of those off spawn battles. So honestly, I think I'd agree with you lot and go with Reed, Cooper, Curly. But yeah.
One more thing I want to point out is they didn't have the caliber of players around them in group stages that they do in Grants. I mean, you look at the Seaport team,
for sure,
you got Booga Rapid Threats, you got Bolts, Kanata, Sphinx to their south, and you got arguably one of the best two teams, definitely one of the best two teams, arguably the best team in the lobby with Acorn, Agers, and Poyo.
Right.
So
yeah, no, it's not an easy situation to be in.
Definitely not.
It's not.
But if it ends here, I will say pretty good season for Bucky, all things considered. Losing Craze early on in the season. I think he did have some family issues. I saw that on Twitter. And then he played really well. Specifically, Bucky in group stage. He was making clutch play after clutch play in some of those group stage
He was
games.
the best player on the trio. And
yeah. So if this is if that was the peak of the season, I mean, kudos to Bucky, who's a controversial figure, I think, by design by him, but kudos to Bucky for a decent season.
Yeah, I don't think this will be the peak of the season. I think they're going to have a really good grind. I think they've just been a bit unlucky with the matchup. All right, next one. We have Creon, Tony, and Noisy versus Vert, Taki, and Eshu. If I'm being honest with you boys, I've not watched any Fortnite from either of these teams. So please inform me. Who is playing higher here?
Guys. I know quite a few of these guys personally, actually. Taki is one of those guys. He's come up recently. He just started placing, within the past like 6 months to a year, I think, and has just been going crazy. But again, we got to take it back and we got to take a look at draw spots. I think what's going to happen here is this may actually turn into an all-out fight over the jewelry store to the north between both teams. Just depends on what happens, like how the off-spawn and looting strategies look for both teams. But in my mind, there's that gold there is way too valuable to my overall game plan, especially having that black market there. If it turns into a fight, I'm taking Creon, Tony, and Noisy. Because I know Tony and Noisy are very, very good creative players. I know Vert and Taki in them are, obviously extremely consistent players. But I think Creon and Tony and Noisy have a little bit more firepower. So, but again, if they don't clash over that jewelry store, I might be taking Vert, Taki, and Eshu in a long game, in consistency.
Yeah, I mean, I think I also like Vert, Taki, and Eshu more in that like long consistency type of game. Like when I was watching them in groups, they only played 2 total matches. And I think the first game they got second, and then the second game they won. But both their games were off of high ground. And so I don't know how much they're going to be able to translate that play style into grands. But I mean,
they're not translating that into grands. Spoiler alert. Yeah.
But I mean, this one's a tough one for me. I mean,
it's interesting that you guys are so high on Vert, Taki, and Eshu, because again, I genuinely haven't watched any of them. Just going off of like my knowledge of the season and looking at the map, like Pumped is just such a good spot this season, and the fact that you have a team fighting off spawn, or 2 teams fighting off spawn at Magic, to me, like this is a situation. If there was like one of the big 7 in teams and they landing at Pumped, I think you'd be predicting them to win, this season. So just off of spot, I like this for Creon.
Like Demas on EU type of thing.
Just off of spot, I really like this. But
do you think Creon's going to get some hubris though? That's some Sophocles joke. If no one got the reference,
tell you, none of us get a reference.
one person in the comments going to get like, I know my ancient Greek plays, and they're going to get that joke.
There you go. A bit of ancient Greek. I mean, you can't say we don't give you everything on this podcast. We give you a bit of
variety show.
All right. So what's the call then?
Yeah, I'll break the tie here. Let's go with Creon, Tony. Let's put them through. Very tight. I think Vert, Taki, and Eshu, I'd have to double check. They've been a little bit more consistent this season, but I think to Levin's point on the drop spot, what T-Church said about battling for the jewelry store seems to be stacking a few things in their favor. They have a contested team directly next to them. I think it's tight, but let's give it to Tony and Co. As long as Creon doesn't get hubris.
You saying it more doesn't make me get it. It doesn't make me get it anymore.
You're gonna look it up after. You're gonna be like, "Fuck, Teddy cooked." Teddy cooked.
It's quite late. I'll probably forget by the time we're done. Head to bed. All right, next matchup in our first round, we have Magma Causes Josh up against Dozier, Nat, and Aiden. Are these guys fighting off spawn? They are, right? They're fighting sort of to the split west of Flooded. Oh no, they're not. They're not fighting each other.
No, so that's a different team that they're Dozier, Nat, and Aiden are fighting.
Okay.
This one, I mean, I just off of this, Dozier being contested, like I gotta take Magma in them.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's really no brainer.
I'll be honest. This is one of those unfortunate situations for the audio listeners. You can't see who they're going to be facing next in the bracket, but this is one of those fodder situations where it doesn't matter who we pick here. Let's just get it that way. All right, on to our
keep moving on.
On to our next first round matchup. We have Decay, Polar, and Cynix versus Shadow, Tyler, and Curve.
Let's keep it moving. Let's go Shadow, Tyler, and Curve, and let's
Teddy with the executive decision. Respect.
yeah.
An interesting matchup here. I think we have a clear team to go through, but we have Booga Threats Rapid and Diminished Braids and Visuals. Any thoughts on Diminished this season?
I do. I think this is a team that you could see over the coming seasons potentially breaking into that Mag 7. I think that they've performed really well. I think that there's still a lot of potential on that team. So I do want to say that obviously I'm not going to put them ahead of Booga and Co, but I do think that this is, could make the Mag 7 the excellent 8.
I mean, they have they have Uncon Foxy, so they have a very good center map position. The big thing is them being right next to Peterbot. Obviously, it depends on which way that goes. If Peterbot wants to pick on them for Surge, it could be a really bad Grands for them. If not, and Minish is a very smart player. This is another guy that I know personally. I know he knows that, and he's going to be planning for that, and he's going to be trying to avoid Peter. But again, you don't always have a choice when it comes to Peterbot.
Peterbot turns head. Oh shit! Right?
Yeah. Exactly. So. But yeah, there's no way, and I couldn't possibly come up with an argument to put them up over Booga Threats and Rapids. So,
I'm curious to see how Grands plays this season. But the one problem Foxy had last season, obviously, is that all the fights for Surge take place on the extremities. People are running outwards a lot of the time to fight for Surge, and so being the Foxy team is actually the worst situation ever because you spend the first 2.5 zones seeing nobody if you try and play from there, and then you're just playing catch up the rest of the game. But yeah, we'll see. Do we have sorry, I thought you were going to say something, Teddy.
No, I just said also they have the same Bucky Okus Cam issue that T-Church pointed out when we talked about them, which is they're just sandwiched in between a lot of exceptional trios.
Yeah. All right. On to our next matchup. We have Eulogy, Phenom, and Yusuf going up against Donny, Joji, and Craze. I think this is actually an Osborne fight at Span. How do we reckon this goes? Who's going to come out on top in this Osborne fight?
Is this going to be a eulogy for eulogy, fellas, or what are we thinking?
This one feels...
now that's a cook. Wait, that's a cook, Teddy. I like that.
This one feels more even than some of the other Osborne matches that we have, just because a lot of the experience is similar between the two teams. I know Yusuf, Phenom have been in Grands a couple of times before. Joji's coming back after long break. Donnie's kind of in the same position. So this is one that I could really see going basically either way. But I think that, if we're talking about who's going to move into the next round, you really got to think about, even if it does go 6-6, who's going to be doing better in the games that they get to play. And just from what I've seen this season, Donnie, Joji, Craze have been playing very, very well.
Well, Craze has had an insane season, just storyline wise too. If he does well, you got kind of the dropped by Booga. I thought he was actually landing on Booga, so.
He was for a little bit, but that didn't last very long. So
I always love the crash out of when people get dropped. You dropped me, I'm landing on you now. It's all right, man. Come on, let's get serious. All right, Kdog, break the tie for us. What are your thoughts on? Are you on the Donny hype train?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm more like last season I was on more of the Donny hype train, when he was first going on 0 and he looked crazy once he moved to 0 and all that. But I mean, this season, I really like Craze. He's been doing good in solos. I mean, I think I'm just going with Donny, Craze, and Joji here.
All right, nice one, nice picks. Our next matchup we have Vorteca, Bacon, and Nerfa versus Silic, Jug, and King.
King. I think he led damage in his heat, if I'm not wrong.
I'm pretty
sure. Very good player.
They were cooking that whole heat.
Very good, very underrated. I know Vorteca, Bacon, Nerface, they got a lot of Grands experience. but this might be an off-spawn battle where I would pick the underdog just from like the momentum that they're carrying from the way that they've been playing the rest of the season. You know, especially when they have a good group stage. You know, you're going to carry that momentum into grands, and I think that this really probably goes King's way.
Okay, I like that.
And you know who likes that even more, Levin? The console community. Console Fortnite is super excited about this.
Are they still actively playing on console, or were they console players?
No, they were console players.
Okay,
But you have the console community. They're going into the Clicks Twitter community, and they're saying you guys are lucky they're not contesting Clicks. You know, we got a lot of we got
confidence.
we got a whole community behind this trio, so it's a nice.
Oh, they were the ones that landed Lone Wolf.
Yeah, they landed
Geats.
Lone Wolf
Okay,
during group stage.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, they were playing crazy.
Yeah, a lot of they were all saying, "Hey, Clicks, you're very lucky." You know that we're being respectful here.
Just off of that alone, it's got to be done.
It's got to
be. All right.
Yeah.
Our next matchup, we have Bryce, G Money, and Osid up against Enough, Hayes, and Mafia. And I have to say, it's got to be Bryce's trio. They've looked great. G Money and Osid have been on a tear this year. This is a team I'm really excited about. We'll put them through. Our next matchup, again, a pretty obvious one. We have Ozone.
Is that a team you think, Levin, that can get into the Mag 7?
Yeah.
Hey, I feel like y'all are being a little bit disrespectful. I feel like you guys are being a little bit disrespectful to my boy Bryce because he has been incredible. And I mean absolutely incredible since Chapter 4. It doesn't matter who he plays with. I think he's missed, like 1 grand since then, and it was last season when him and Reet had to team up last second. So, Bryce, absolutely incredible player. Undoubtedly, in my mind, he's top 3 IGL on NA. Of course, I'm a little bit biased.
That's a big claim.
I'm a little bit biased considering the fact that I worked with him in the past, and we had a lot of great history together. But I think my boy Bryce gets disrespected. Okay,
I definitely agree.
He is so, and it's because he's not super flashy. Like he's a very textbook IGL, but he plays the game right. And sometimes that just gets disrespected.
And he's Bryce has been at the last 2 lands, right? Obviously, he was there with Chubbs a couple years ago. He was there with Bolts last year, and he's always going to show up. He's always had great performances on land as well. So always gets a win, and has the most
awkward
nonchalant interview of all time. I was going to go with nonchalant. You said awkward, but I didn't want to be the one to say it.
No, I think it's like a mainstay of LAN, and I hope he doesn't change it.
Okay.
I hope we get another Bryce win.
If there's going to be somebody who upsets the top 3, it's going to be Bucky Camokas or it's going to be Bryce, G Money, and Osid.
I love it.
Those are your dark horse wild card teams. I like that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so our next matchup, we have Ozone, Golden, Void up against Canada, Sphinx, and Bolts. Yeah, that's not
I think we know who's going through, but Ozone, Golden, and Void have had a decent season. So credit to them.
No disrespect. Yeah, I mean they're a great team, but if we're talking about Canada, Sphinx, and Bolts,
it's a bad matchup for them.
That's the right way to put it. Sometimes you
no disrespect whatsoever.
Yeah, you get a tough matchup sometimes.
No disrespect whatsoever.
And then for our last matchup in round 1,
enter Sandman, Metallica.
Thank you. Thank you, Teddy. Evan, Xander, Sandman up against Jay, Zakis, and Polus. If I told you, if I told you I knew anything about these teams, I'd be lying. I know diddly squat. Who goes through, it doesn't matter.
Like I said, I mean, I try to touch on these teams a little bit. I might have jumped the gun a little bit earlier, but like I said, Zackles is in Suscript's friend group. I did work with Suscript for a little while back in Chapter 5 when he made Grands with Freeze.
So is he a decent player?
Zackles is a decent, he's a very good player, very intelligent, very smart. I know he was kind of helping out Suscript as well with some strategies and stuff like that. He was in the call and me and him were bouncing ideas off of each other. So I know he's a very smart player. But again, like I was saying earlier, I think the experience bites him in the ass a little bit here. And I think Evans and Sandman have a little bit more than they do in that department. So that would give them the edge in my mind.
Let's put them through and then knock them out instantly because they are up against Acorn, Ages, and Pollo in our next round. The first matchup, they are gone. Acorn, Ages, and Pollo going through. The next matchup here is Canada, Sphinx, and Bolts up against Bryce, G-Money, and OSID.
I thought we had a great conversation about Bryce, G-Money, and OSID, which means I think we can put Canada through. And then we have a great bracket to talk about in just a few minutes here between Acorn and Canada's trios.
It's getting juicy. It's getting juicy.
Woo-wee.
Props to Bryce and them, though. They look really good. I think they'll have a great season.
Tough matchup.
Very tough matchup. They would have beaten a lot of the other matchups, or maybe not a lot, but they would have beaten some of the other matchups, to be fair. We have Silic, Jug, and King versus Donny, Joji, and Craze.
What do you think? Console community
now.
Console community is like a British pub during the World Cup right now. Very tense. They're watching.
Waiting,
they're hoping that their
anticipating.
Guys
So
unfortunately, they should be ready for disappointment if they're an English pub. so
a big thing that I think is going to definitely influence Silic and Kings and Jargu's Grands is what happens. Where do Bucky? So both of these teams actually, I believe, are so both these teams are potential victims of our Bucky, Cam, and Ocus trio, who may be keying out to the edge of the map. So I think a lot of it just depends on how drug out the fight gets. To allow those teams to come over, and here's the reality: is Kappa off spawn has a lot more materials than Shining. It's a bit easier to split, so we could potentially see a more drawn out fight there at Kappa. And I think that gives Donnie and them the edge.
Well, there are some rapid threats to Donnie's team off spawn.
Agreed. Yes, you are right. They could die out the air.
Kdog, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just gonna go Donnie, Joji, and Crazy here.
Okay, let's put them through. The console community, just like the English football fans, left in disappointment.
It's not coming home.
Hey, I hope they prove us wrong.
That would be a great story. It would.
England too.
Now we're getting too crazy, man. That's not happening. Booger, Threats, and Rapid up against Shadow, Tyler, and Curve.
Is this? I mean, I think through.
Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity if anyone has any Shadow, Tyler, and Curve thoughts. They've been pretty underrated, basically for a year, right? Shadow and Shadow's been around for a while. He was kind of one of the next up 2021 prospects, I think it's turned out pretty well for him. But I mean,
they're a good trio, and like they're still like underrated, but like it's just not their time yet. Still, like Booga Threats and Rapid are still just.
Kdog, how would you compare Booga's amount of locked inness from this season compared to last? What do you think?
Oh, way more. Like last season, like Booga's been like playing scrims. He's been playing like literally everything. And then like last season, I mean, it was the meme coin. So
for sure, we got to compliment him.
There's no Booga there.
I'm sure the EU guys gave a bunch of shots came Booga's way. Probably spent the whole time talking about Booga and why didn't the EU guy win the solo World Cup and all that stuff. So I just wanted to make sure we got it out there.
How did you know? Did you watch the bit already? Like, have you watched it? How do you know? Oh man, can't get it. It feels so wrong seeing like FNtasia branding and then Booga appreciation. It's weird. All right, our next matchup is not a contest. Peterbot goes through.
Yeah.
Sorry, Magma Causes and Josh. Peterbot goes through. We'll move on swiftly. Creon, Tony, and Noisy up against Reet, Cooper, and Curly.
This one's pretty cut and dry, in my opinion, is Reet, Cooper, Curly. I mean, they got uncon flooded. You know, they have a more experience than just about anybody in the lobby. You know, their POIs are pretty much even, so it comes down really just to player skill, and I'm taking Reet, Cooper, Curly all day.
I heard Cooper is the one IGLing more now. Does anyone like
he has been well, Cooper's always been one to com like a lot, sometimes overcom. But I think he has been taking a bit more leadership, to be fair. So yeah, that's what it sounds like.
I'm actually excited to talk about that trio a bit more when we get to that matchup as well, the Reet, Cooper, Curly. I think there's actually a lot of interesting things to discuss with them.
Okay. Before we get there, let's settle the rest of the bracket. We have Muzz, Rise, and Yapko up against Aviv, Skittles, and Chimp.
Can I say something? And this is kind of an aside. So I listen to FNtasia a lot.
Okay.
And I go on FNtasia now a decent amount of time, and both are great pleasures to me.
Okay.
But I hear a common refrain when the guys discuss which region is better, NA or EU. And it's about Yapko. It's Yapko goes to NA. He's tier 1. Yapko is in EU. You know, he can barely find a trio, barely make grands, you know, all this. And I think there's a lot of context missing for Yapko. 1, he's perfect for trios. 2, me, Kdog, and Teacher all know people improve year over year. They practice. The meta is better for them, right? So, you know, we had Vidil come down. I didn't see him, you know, cooking. You know, Tayson came 15th when he came to
You didn't see Vidil cooking? Did you watch last season? What do you mean you didn't see Vidil cooking?
Fine. But he didn't win
FNCS.
He didn't win FNCS, but fine. That you know, I we'll take that one back. Vidil played really well. But, you know, let's ease up on Yapko a little bit. I think he's become this FNtasia mascot, just like Booga. And let's give the man his due.
I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's true. I think we all praise the fact that Yapko's gone to your region and looks like Jesus. Like I think we all enjoy that as FNtasia. It's funny you say that because I've seen that sentiment in the comments. Like I've seen people get really angry at us for how we talk about Yapko. But I think like we're not like it's not a lie. Like when he was on EU, he was a talented player who just never really pushed on, you know, like there's a lot of players like that in EU. He goes to NA, you know, he finds good teammates, he gets comfortable and he starts to show what he can do. I don't think that's like a diss. That's just his story. Like, I don't know why people get mad when we highlight that. Yeah, when he was on EU, he's kind of stunk. But that doesn't mean he's a bad player because we saw what he could do, you know?
I had to stand up for Yapko there.
I don't think anyone is standing for Yapko. I think Yapko is standing on his own 2 feet by being a good Fortnite player. You know, like he's been really good. He's had a great career already. When you look at what he did, he's won a LAN. Not many people can say that. He went to LAN and filled in with Swizzy and looked phenomenal and was fantastic. And all of us on FNtasia highlighted that an incredible amount. And he's gone to NA. He couldn't really get a tier 1 team on EU. That's just a fact. He literally couldn't. He tried out with Cammy and Seti. They didn't want to keep playing with him. They'd rather play with other people. He came to NA. He's found tier 1 teammates because he is a tier 1 talent player. And I think that's been clear for a while now.
Okay.
I don't know why. Sorry. No, I had to defend FNtasia. I had to defend FNtasia there.
I'm glad. You know, I'm glad we have the proper Yapko discourse. I just wanted to make sure the Yapko discourse was healthy because I think
it's more than healthy.
I want healthy Yapko discourse more than anything.
That's fair.
Fair. I think what you're saying about finding teammates and stuff like that is really true too, because it's just like you really can't discount the impact that personality and individual play style and all these kind of things have on finding teammates. And you know, just because someone has to switch regions doesn't necessarily mean they're a worse player. They may just not be able to find anyone that they mesh with on their home region. For sure.
Yeah, no, we could go into a whole thing about that even more, to be fair, like because there is a lot of context there. But anyway, Muzz, Rise, Yapko, I think I'd put these guys through. You know, they're part of that big 7 we always talk about. Aviv, Skittles, and Chimp, in and out of it. talent-wise, depth are there. Honestly, can pull out a result at any given time, but I think most people would expect Muzz, Rise, and Yapko to place higher than those guys. Yeah. And then our final matchup in this round, Noah plays his trio up against Clicks, Higgs, and Iomzo. Kdog, can you do the honors?
Yeah, I mean, this should be this is Clicks. Right?
Yeah.
Not too much.
Last time we did, I don't want to scare any of you, but last time we did a bracket, we had our good friend Vivid on, who's also an NA representative, and he gave some opinions on Clicks and Veno at the time. That's how far back we're going here. He gave some opinions on Clicks and Veno, and the Clicks community didn't like it.
Didn't he say that like, they weren't going to make land or something like that? Wasn't that one of his takes back then, or was that something else?
There was more added context to it.
Okay, I saw that in the Clicks community back in the day. I feel like,
but that's the thing, right? It went straight to the Clicks community without the context, and it wasn't great. And so, yeah, be careful with the Clicks. You don't want to mess with the Clicks community, is what I'm saying. All right, we are now in.
And according to Mr. Savage, that is my trio, by the way. According to
yes, okay, you're right. It's your trio according to Mrs. Savage. According to some of the comments, it's your son's trio. I don't know. It's they don't know what they are. They don't know what you are, I think is the thing here. We're in the round of 8 now. We're in the round of 8, and we always, we started off the pod with Teddy highlighting the big 7. Do you feel like the big 7 are present here in the round of 8?
Yeah, all the big 7. That is all the big 7 there for sure.
Yeah,
or that's what I would consider the big 7.
And who is the 8th team that pushed their way in?
Donnie Joji.
Pretty crazy story. Pretty crazy story.
Do we feel like they deserve to? Obviously, the luck of the bracket comes through, but does this feel right as that the next? Do they feel like the next team in contention there, or did they get a lucky matchup?
No, they got a lucky matchup. Yeah. Of everyone else on the board, it's Bryce.
Let me see.
In my opinion,
I want to get everyone's team. Who's everyone's next team?
I like the Bryce pick. I'm gonna go with Braids and Minished and Visuals so we all pick our own team. I think if we all pick our own team, then it's fun. And then everyone, when they're at school, at work, talking about FNCS, they can be a big ball knower because we each gave them an underrated team.
All right, then I'll go with Shadow Curve and Tyler then. On con, I think they can pull off top 10, and I mean 8. That's doable. If I think they can pull off top 10.
As the unofficial judge, I just made myself the judge 3 seconds ago. I lean more towards Kdog's team. I really like Shadow's trio. I think they got something there.
Are you sure that's not just Kdog's aura though?
It's true. That plays a factor. That plays a factor for sure. That plays a factor.
I appreciate it.
All right. Let's get into our top 8 now. This is where the matchups start getting tough. This is where, we really got to look at the details here. We will start with Muzz, Rise, Yapko up against Clicks, Higgs, and Iomzo. A matchup with a bit of history because Clicks was obviously playing with Muzz and Rise. Their trajectory since then have been somewhat different. I think for most of this season, Clicks, Higgs, and Iomzo have looked like the much better team, but some people are looking at their group's performance and maybe overreacting, but maybe rightfully concerned. Where do you guys stand on that line?
This is really hard for me because it's a Canadian ginger against a Canadian ginger.
True.
And yes. I may have to sit this one out, to be completely honest. It's an amazing matchup, but I think I may sit.
I give you that pass. You can sit this one out, and we will defer to T-Church and Kdog.
In my mind, there's one thing that determines how Clicks, Higgs, and Iomzo's tournament goes, and it's how fucked up that black market is. Because they rely on that black market extremely heavily to get the loot that they do. I mean, they're carrying all cap splashes. You know what I'm saying? They're getting thousands and thousands of gold out of their vault. But the thing is if you got 3 or 4 teams going for the black market and you don't have a timing on each and every zone that you can guarantee that loot, it's going to get real rough real quick. Now, the good news is that they have that launch pad. The loot at layer is relatively dense, so they can be one of the first teams to get to that market. Or there's, I'm sure BloodX will cook up some other strategies for them to get that market. But to me, in my mind, it really just depends on how the battle for the black market goes. And so it's really, really hard for me to pick one because it's like we don't know yet. But based on what's been going on throughout the season, they've been doing a good job of securing it. And securing that loot on a consistent basis. So I would still go with Click Sigs and Yamzo.
I think my team to go through here is Click Sigs and Yamzo. I have some things I want to say about them. But I'll save it for the next round if they are going through. But I assume they're going through. Kdog, how do you feel though?
Yeah, no, I think they are too. I think Clicks, Yamzo, and Higgs are one of 3 teams on NA that have FNCS winning potential. And I mean, depending on, of course, like the black market things and everything like that. But like even without it, I mean, I know they didn't have the best group stage, but I still think that they're a top 3 team on the region.
So we'll put them through. Who will they be going up against? It will be between Reet, Cooper, and Curly, and Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual. And I'm gonna skip this one because Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual.
I want to make just one point, which is Curly and then temporarily Craze were the 2 players this past season who have kind of broken into that upper echelon of NA. I just wanted to point that out.
I think that's
no further analysis, but I thought it was an interesting observation.
I think that is fair. Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual will go through to the semis. Now, up to the top of the bracket, we have Donny, Joji, and Craze up against Booga, Threats, and Rapids.
I think we already kind of talked about that.
Yeah, we'll put Booga through. Donny, Joji, and Craze. Craze, you gave Craze your props just there, Teddy. And Donny, Joji, and Craze are a good team, by all things considered. I think they definitely have gotten a bit lucky with the bracket here. I think there's some other teams that maybe deserve to be in this spot this deep. But it's fine. That happens.
Sure. Shout out to the Joji comeback. That's
true.
One last thing I'll say. Shout out to the Joji comeback.
No, I'm a big fan of Joji. I'm a big fan of anyone who's just sort of, been around for a long time, came back to the game and managed to get themselves back into like grands or anything. I say that, but then on the EU bracket, I was laughing and joking about Stormy, right? So, I'm a bit of a two-faced person. Next matchup, and our final matchup here in the quarterfinals, we have Acorn, Ages, and Poyo versus Canada, Sphinx, and Bolts.
And then it became personal to me. It became personal. Michael Jordan, Canada.
I think this is unfortunate because I think it's just not fair for Canada, Sphinx, and Bolts because it is just Acorn, Ages, and Poyo. I know their group stage looked shoddy, but they're the reigning champs. When you look on paper, they're one of the only teams you can really cook up something to say like they should or they can beat Peterbot. Canada, Sphinx, and Bolts, I think, are a great team, and I think there's something really cool there. Like there's something really, really cool there. Just not in this matchup.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
You know what though? If you did it like, in gambling, where it's like you pick a team, the longer the odds, the better the payout. I would feel more confident with a higher payout betting on Canada, Sphinx, and Bolts, if that makes sense. I really like this trio, and I would not be surprised to see them in the top 2 or the top 3.
High risk, high reward type of pick.
100%.
Okay, look, how do you feel about these 2 teams?
I mean, all right. So the thing about like Canada, Sphinx, and Bolts, I was so high on Canada, Bolts, and Rapid last season. I think I predicted them like top 3, and then like obviously like the whole stuff with them like wasn't going too well, and then like so I think this season I'm just so much more hesitant on my prediction for Canada, Bolts, and now Sphinx. I mean, I know Bolts is grinding more, obviously, and that was like the whole thing last season. But like, I feel like right now, like I could still see them placing outside the top 5.
You don't think with bear market bolts we're going to see a better performance?
I think it's definitely possible. I still just think like last season just left a sour taste in my mouth, and now I'm like they haven't like done nothing crazy since they formed together either. So it's like I don't really know what super going off of to want to be that high on them.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel Kanata has one in him right now. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like the universe, the vibrations, but it's just something saying to me that Kanata's gonna have a good one.
The one thing I'll say about them is they're landing hopeful heights. And I remember last season, obviously, by the time Hopeful Heights had been changed and updated, it was Hopeful Heights is like becoming the spot where it's like, random teams just con there. But I feel like if you can have all of Hopeful Heights to yourself, it's actually an unreal spot, and like you can really cook something from there. And so I actually think spot wise, like Hopeful is quite underrated. But again, they are just going up against Acorn Ages and Poyo, who I think most people still have as a top 2 contender. And so Acorn Ages and Poyo will go through. Kanata, Sphinx, and Bolts probably should be a lock for top 5, but you never know with these things. You never know. Into the semi-final. I'm going to start us off with Acorn Ages and Poyo up against Booga, Frets, and Rapid.
I think it's good. I think it's
wish
good.
The audio listeners could see your faces right now. That was great.
I think it's good. Booga's locked in this season. I like the way this trio's performed, but I just don't think in good conscience we could put them through over Acorn Ages and Poyo.
Everything else being even, right? Because both teams have a vault, both teams have a great POI. They both have things that play to their advantages. So we got to just give it to the team, I think, that is slightly more skilled, which is going to be Acorn Ages and Poyo.
Well, yeah, it's funny you say both, like all things even, right? It's like all things even, but then you have to factor in that one team has the best IGO in NA.
Well, that's one player skill, isn't it?
One team has, the guy who's just coming off of like his 5th FNTS in a row and is like one of the best fraggers of all time.
One team has Booga, 11.
One team. I can't fucking escape it. Okay.
Hey, can I ask Kdog a question?
Yeah.
What do we think? Because I saw a clip that you had posted of Poyo and Agers maybe in game, a little conflict over who got to carry what loot, a little troll from Poyo potentially. On a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think the vibes of Acorn Agers of Poyo is right now? And how much do you think that might factor into their performance this coming weekend?
Okay. I've been very vocal on this because like I get asked this a lot. Like anytime I talk about Agers, Acorn, and Poyo, like they always compare them to like Clicks and stuff. And they're like, oh, like Clicks is going to do better than them because of vibes and things like that. I think when they first got back together, the vibe was definitely not the best on Agers, Acorn, and Poyo. Like Agers wasn't giving Poyo the mythic pump. And so Poyo was like griefing their game and everything. But like, I feel like when you're a team that's as good as this team, and if you're doing well, which they have been doing well, I don't think vibes matter as much as people are trying to like put it on them. Like, if that makes sense. Like, I think if you're doing bad and your vibes are already bad, then it matters more. But like this team is coming off of winning a grands. Like Poyo's trying to win his 5th FNCS in a row. Acorn's a grand finals player. Like, I still think they'll be just fine no matter what the vibes really are on them. But I think they have also improved like over time during the season. But I don't think they love playing with each other. But I think they're just like they have to, so they're going to.
Yeah, they keep it together for their third from last dance.
Yeah. I think they'll be just fine though.
Count the.
I think that actually works against them. I think the fact that they have got the win and they are the reigning champs. I think that works against them. I think if they were playing for the qual spot, it's easier to put the vibes aside because you have the let's get the job done. But there's an element of this where like I do think that you run the risk. I don't think this team has a bad Grands by any stretch of the imagination. Like I don't think that. I think there's a good chance they just end in like 4th or something, and it's like not bad, but it's just like not, because the vibes have been a bit hit this season, and I know it's a narrative that people have sort of been going into, but I do think there's a real element to it. As someone who might know, or maybe I don't know, but I do think there's an element to it. Do with that what you will. With that being said, they're a better team than Booga, Threats, and Rapid.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they go through. And I think they place high. Like, I think the ceiling for them, not the ceiling, but like the
floor,
the differential. Yeah, the differential, the floor and
The
ceiling
range,
differential
the range, yeah.
is just like way tighter. Like this team is either winning or coming like 4.
2 to 5. Yeah, 2 to 4.
Yeah.
2 to 4. 2 to 4.
Yeah, that's or
my 1 to 4, 1 to 5.
Yeah, 1 to 4, 1 to 5, that type of range. Whereas like Booga, I don't see those guys winning, and they could just have a stinker. Like they could.
Yeah.
And now for our final semi-final matchup, Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual versus Clicks, Higgs, and Iomzo. It could have been a final matchup, but the luck of the bracket means it's the semi-finals instead. What do we think?
I think we put Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual, and then I think there's a great conversation to have about that trio when we put them up against Acorn, Agers, and Cold.
I don't know if it's as cut and dry as that. Peter, listen, and I think Peterbot is an amazing, talented player, right? But when we're talking about teams, I don't think Pete's the best teammate. I think that can factor into the way that they play. I think the mental side for Ritual is going to be tough. He got shit. Listen, I love Ritual. Kid is mentally tough. He is a grinder. He's extremely smart. But you cannot discount the weight of thousands, maybe even millions of people telling you how fucking shit you are at your job. Yeah. You can't discount that. And so I think that they could have some real troubles with their surge strategies. And if they fail to get surge the way they want to, 12 out of 12, it opens the window for Clicks, Higgs, and Iomzo to steal it from them. So there is a world in my mind where Clicks, Higgs, and Iomzo take this from Peter. But again, it comes down to how successful is that trio going to be executing their strategy on the day.
T-Church, how would you just power rank the top 3 teams here? Because I assume with Acorn's team, like these are the top 3 in your opinion.
I would put Acorn, Agers, Boyo first.
Okay.
I would put Peterbot, Cold, Ritual second, and I'll put Clicks, Higgs, and Iomzo third.
Okay. No, that's good. I
don't think it's Clicks, Higgs, and Iomzo beating Peterbot. I think it's Peterbot beating himself.
Yeah. Wow. Would that ever be a shocking result though?
They got second last season. Everybody thought he was going to win and run away with it, and they had been winning everything. But Grands is a different story. Grands is a different lobby to every other lobby that you see throughout the season. Everyone's playing the best that they possibly can. They're playing much more defensive. It's much harder to get damage, much harder to get kills. That's just the way it is. And so there is a world where they have a couple of bad games. Pete gets in his own head. Ritual gets in his head. Maybe they just don't have the best Grands and they come second again or they come third.
I think I will not. I don't think I've ever rooted for a player as much as I'm going to root for Ritual to play well this grand finals.
I hope to God Ritual plays out of his mind. I really do, because I would love to see the kid redeem himself from last season. Even though a lot of it you may not have been able to exactly pin on Ritual. It's just, when you end up being the scapegoat for that team.
Yep.
Yeah.
Kdog, what's the take?
like I see what you're saying, T-Church, about like the Clicks, Yamzo, and Higgs thing, and like I can agree with a lot of that. I think Clicks and them have the potential to be a more consistent team than Peterbot because like Peter's going to be going for more of those like probably mid-game pushes onto like the weaker teams in the lobby around him, and like there's always going to be a chance that they just die and then like they have some dud games. But I think they're like high point potential games are going to still be able to carry them to a win in this, even if they're not as consistent as like Clicks, Higgs, and Yamzo. And so I still think Peterbot's the
like I said, I don't think it's Clicks, Higgs, and Yamzo are just gonna be like play lights out and they're just gonna be better than Pete's trio. I think Pete's trio, I think they beat themselves. You know, and that's been the reality since the beginning of chapter 5. Like if Pete's not gonna get first in Grands, like it's probably gonna be like partially his fault. You know what I mean? Maybe not directly Peter's fault, but it's going to be his team not like playing to their fullest potential. And that's what happened last season. They didn't play to their fullest potential. They got beat.
Yeah. I think it's fair. There's a lot of pressure, 100%, a lot of pressure, and Grands is a different beast. But I think in this particular matchup, even if it's very close, I'd have to give Peter, Cold, and Ritual the advance here. And then I'd leave with the one note, which is Higgs did an unbelievably quick rebrand, so good for him.
Yeah, props to Higgs. And shout out on being on Exit as well. Congrats.
Yeah.
Look, I don't like being unpopular in the eyes of the Clicks community. And so I often try to stay away. But unfortunately, in this case, I have to be honest as possible. And I think the honest reality is that it is not going to be close. I think as a community, there is this, and it's good that we have it, because if we didn't, it would have been a miserable, miserable year. But I think because they didn't win last season, there is this advanced feeling of, it's much closer than it is. I think and we were victims on this on FNtasia, and I remember we got quite a little stick in the comments after our Grands ep talking about them, and it forced me to reflect. Usually I ignore the comments because I'm like, I don't care what these people say. But it forced me to reflect, and I went back and watched a lot of the games, and they didn't win, but they played unbelievable. Ritual maybe didn't play his best, sure. But when you just look at what they did, the last Grands not winning, it was insane. And to me, I look back on it and it's more Acorn, Ages, and Poyo rose to that level than Peterbot's team fell down a level. Like, these guys still just like when I look at this lobby, right? And it's very, even when you just look at the simplicity, the most simple thing you can look at here. Kills. Just who's going to get kills? These guys are going to kill people at a rate I don't think any team can catch up with, right? That's why when we talk about, Clicks' trio, the way we talk about them is in the capacity of consistency, like Kdog said, right? It's right. Like, they're going to have to beat them out consistency-wise. But the only team that was able to keep up with them in terms of just fragging was Ages' team. And they could do that again this season, but I feel like a lot of people would feel like that's you're asking them to, like, you're asking Ages to play how he played last season, where he was the second best player in the lobby and was unbelievable. Like, that's not a tough task. Like, I think those guys had a life a weekend. I think Peterbot, Code, and Ritual are going to wipe the floor with everybody in a way that makes us all go, why did we ever even think it was going to be close? That's how I feel about it.
That's how I, to be honest, I see it going. I completely agree, Levin. It took to beat them last time. It took Acorn conducting a strategy where they didn't take any damage from Surge. So basically perfect IGLing, right? I don't think you could describe more perfect IGLing than that. Maybe Queasy in the Chapter 4 Season 2 when they dominated. Poyo and Agers were 3 and 4 in eliminations. Agers had like 6 solo clutches where it was just insane. An extra 15 points a game. Oh, don't worry. Agers will get us an extra 15 points each game. It was crazy. And that's what it took. And they still barely won. If it had gone to a 13th game, they would not have won that tournament.
I think the fact that they didn't win makes it feel like damn, like it's actually. I just don't think it's close, and it's funny because, you know, I'll be the first person to say I actually don't care too much about groups results in terms of projecting, just because the way those lobbies play out, it's not always the same. You know, I saw Yomzo talking about it in terms of like, like the teams aren't around you. You don't know how people are playing, especially in NA, like there was a lot of sort of like people new to groups and stuff like that. People have never played grands in those lobbies. But the performances of those two teams, Clicks and Acorns trios, like can't inspire you in terms of like who's, you know, are they going to be able to keep up with Peterbot in 12 games? Yeah, man. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. But I feel as confident as I've ever felt about Peterbot going into a Grands. That's my take. I feel as confident as I've ever felt.
It's gonna be amazing though. This is Pollo's got 5 in the row on the line, and then Peterbot's got the bounce back. 11, you never fail to get me so jacked up for these finals. I'm jacked up for the Pro-Am from last week. I'm jacked up for the finals for this week. Sorry, TJ.
I wish I was on the broadcast for NA this weekend. It's gonna be fun, man.
No,
T-Church, what's your rebuttal? Tell us why we're wrong.
I mean, I don't think you guys are wrong, to be honest with you. I mean, I just don't think it's gonna be. I don't know if Peter runs away with it though. I mean, if they play consistent, they execute on their strategy every single game, yes, absolutely. You guys are absolutely right. There's nobody in this lobby that's even close to keeping up with them in eliminations, if they're fully locked in on their strategies. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they're wiping the floor with NA11. I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than that. I think Acorn will make it a tournament again. I think there's a lot to be said. I think Clicks' trio, Clicks, Yamzo, Higgs will try to make it a tournament as well. So
here's the question for maybe each one. Which game of grand finals will we know who the winner is? Will it be game 9, 10, 11, or 12?
It'll be 12 realistically. I think it'll be 11. If I was to make my prediction, I'd say it'd be 11. Like going into 11, we'll know they're gonna win realistically. But there'll be like one team in game 12 that like could do it if Peterbot and them die or spawn, which they won't. So then they won't. Like, do you know what I mean? So, I feel like some will be in touching distance in. So
you're
game
saying
12,
we'll know really by game 11.
Yeah, I think once game 11's done, we'll know, but it won't be mathematically done because it will be like there'll be a team like 100 points behind or like 150 points behind to where you're like, well, I guess if Peterbot dies,
let's put that aside. Like in all realistic scenarios, like short a miracle, we'll know the winner in which game. Kdog, what do you think?
Yeah, I think like exactly what Levin was saying, like game 11, probably end of game 11. I mean, yeah, I think Peter's just gonna win.
I want it. So in my heart of hearts, as somebody who loves watching Fortnite, I want it to come down to the last game. I want a storyline, and I realistically want it to happen between all three, right? Like I want it to be a tight race for that top 3, but I'm got to be in agreement with you guys. I think game 11 is pretty much wrapped up, and it's one of those like it'll take a miracle of a choke out of Peterbot for them to lose.
Yeah.
You think it's going to be close after day 1? Like you think Peter's going to be winning after day 1?
I think he'll be winning for most of the tournament. That
so
seems like the likeliest scenario.
In the lead for like 90% of the tournament, or like just every game they'll be in the lead.
Not every. Like I think the start will be a bit like you know how FNtasia the first game, game. But I think like by game 4 they'll probably be at the top and it'll stay that way till game 12.
Okay.
But it's interesting because we have a season where obviously there's a lot of qual spots for globals, and so you want those teams to do really well. But I do think it's fun how we're at a stage now where I personally think outside of those 3 teams, it's gotten weaker. I felt like last season there was more people we felt could
Cooper,
be
Sphinx,
in
and Vidal. Okay,
yeah.
who do you think's a better team, Levin? Who do you think's a better? Kanata, Bolts, and Sphinx, or Cooper, Sphinx, and Vidal?
Or Cooper, Sphinx, and Vidal from last season, or Kanata, Bolts, and Sphinx now?
From this season, yeah.
I mean,
if we're gonna say that's the fourth team or the third team, like
well, if without getting too technical, I actually think Kanada's team's the better team, but Cooper's team was more in form. Like they just look like form wise, like there was things I didn't like about Cooper's team. Like they felt like a very honeymoon period type of team to me. But like sometimes you can ride that out to an FNCS win or to a a second place. And like I guess I just felt like some of the other like Rise, Muzz, and Yapko felt like like I feel like the second to fifth all felt closer last season.
Yeah,
at least, which
yeah.
Whereas now it feels a bit separated up.
Yeah, basically you're saying from season over season, you're like NA lost Fidel, right? Who was definitely top 5, top 10 player on the region last season. I may have incidentally disrespected him last a few like 20 minutes. Oh, I did not mean it.
You're recovering.
But it kind of gained back some of these players who are not locked in, these star players who are not locked in.
Yeah, which helps, I guess. But
yeah.
Okay, so to wrap it up then, between Acorn, Ages, and Poyo, and Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual, who are we all predicting to win FNCS? Who is placing higher between these two teams? Obviously, last season it was Acorn, Ages, and Poyo who outplaced Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual. So it's a worthy rematch in the final. I'll start with you, Teddy.
Yeah, give me Peterbot. I'm generally like I want a story, right? I want to be making a YouTube video where it's like down to game 12, where we had 5 teams in the mix in one of the most high stakes games we'll ever see. But I just don't see it.
Okay, T-Church.
I gotta go with Peter. It's just he's just the best. He's literally just the best. Anytime he's in a lobby, you have to pick him. He's just the best.
Yeah.
Kdog. It's hard to pick against Peterbot. I feel like this is going to be one of his better grand finals performances as well. Like, he's had crazy grand finals performances, but I think especially now that he knows that's like possible for him to lose, then like he's going to be even more locked in somehow. And better.
I just genuinely think like I'm not even exaggerating. I've never felt more confident about Peterbot winning the grands.
Are we all in agreement that one of Peterbot's, if not the best performance he's had, was at Globals last year?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to say it was his best performance.
That's probably one of the
context of the stakes.
Best performances of all time.
That is the best individual performance.
100%.
So to your point, Kdog, do you think he tops that this grands? Because it's different. It's trios. Solo clutching a bunch in trios is a lot harder than duos.
I think just like pure like stakes wise, I don't think you can top that performance.
Doing it on land, looking back at Queasy, flexing on Queasy. That's really tough.
Yeah. The game 11 solo clutch is just too like that is just the best performance of history.
But I think we're gonna get a Master Pete.
Okay, you know what? I'll give you that one as well. Hats off for that one. That was a good one.
Come on, I'll give you that. Straight out of the oven, baby.
Yeah, I feel really good about Pete, Cold, and Ritual. I think last season we had to have a team play perfect Fortnite to beat them. Yeah. And I don't think any of the teams look as potentially sharp. And this is coming from the person who I think of all of like the general public-facing analysts, I think I was the most confident about Acorn, Ages, and Poyo. Just because on paper to me, it was just the most obvious good grand finals team, even though they were a bit mid before grands last season. Yeah. But with that being said,
we said that though, Levin, when we previewed Heats last time. We were like, one of those guys who just shows up in grand finals, and you can't read too much into how they performed throughout the season.
Yeah.
No, who do we think's making LAN? Sorry, last question.
I mean, Click's 100%.
Is it 4 spots? Is it 4 spots on NA as well?
I think it's 3.
It's 3 on NA. Oh, because they give 1 to West.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So 3. So Clicks.
And then after that, I really like.
Is it Clicks, Luga, Kanata, or Rise? What do we think?
I think my 3 would be Clicks, Clicks Rise Booga. Ow. No.
I'm
So
gonna
then you think
go.
Kanata
No.
places at 6 then?
No. No. I think Clicks Canada Rise would be mine.
Ooh. Yeah, I'll go Clicks Booga Kanata.
Okay.
I think I got
Yeah.
Clicks Kanata Rise.
All right.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Clicks cannot rise. I'd have to agree with that one too.
Okay.
Are we gonna do the battle of FNtasia versus Kdog?
So in the comment section below, there's going to be a link to sign up to play fantasy. We have obviously last season we played fantasy for grands. It was great. We had a bunch of you guys show up and play it. It was a lot of fun. I didn't do too well last season, but it's fine. We moved past those.
You did really well in group stage last season.
Yeah, that's my era. But yeah, sign up, play some fantasy, join the FNtasia League. Make sure we do better as a whole than the Kdog League. That's the goal, is to have some. I think we have the ball knowledge necessary. No disrespect, Kdog, to Kdog fans, but I think
What is that supposed to mean? I think we got to prove that statement wrong right there.
You know what's funny though? Well, I say this, but like a lot of like our viewers are people who watch your videos.
Yeah, I know.
So it's like the same people.
We'll do total score and highest score.
Yeah, but Kdog's gonna have more people playing, realistically speaking.
I'll put myself.
You gotta do the average.
Yeah, and I'll.
You gotta do the averages. But yeah, no. Make sure to play some fantasy. It should be fun. We have I completely forgot what I was gonna say. Anyway. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this waffle. There's people who have been complaining that there's not been long eps recently. You know, we've only been doing like an hour and a half. Now you've got yourself a 3-hour ep going into grands.
Can I ask Levin, who on EU, who did you guys have winning? Who won this on EU for you guys?
It was Queasy's trio. Queasy, Mustache, and Swizzy.
Yeah,
were the winners. They were the winners, and I think the rightful winners.
Yeah, Reese Hub bias because of the mustache.
Yes, exactly that. And I wish you were there to mention it. With that being said, let us know what you don't like about our bracket. Thank you all for joining me, my friends. It's a pleasure, and I look forward to having you all on the pod again very, very soon. Thank you for bringing the NA touch. We needed it. I'm sure the fans will be very grateful.
Yeah,
I think this was a cook. This was a cook, Levin.
Hey, I appreciate it. This is a lot of fun, guys. So,
what would we maybe change about the bracket? What's something that you don't like about the graphic? Just about the bracket. Sorry, looking at it.
I think it's the only one. It's the Donnie, Joji, and Craze. I think got pretty far because of the bracket. No disrespect to them whatsoever. I think otherwise it's a cook. I do think it was pretty balanced. So shout out to Clutch.
Yeah, I think it's a good
pretty
bracket.
balanced. Yeah.
I think there was one or two that were like not actually an all spawn fight, but other than that, I thought it was a great bracket.
It's fun. Hey, well,
and one last thing. I'm happy that Colt finally replied to Courage.
Yeah.
He was just leaving him hanging there for a while.
You need that. You need that. He still can't believe that was even a thing. That's crazy. Are you guys gonna? I know Kdog, you're gonna be doing your predictions later on in the week, so be sure to tune into Kdog's predictions and see what he has to say, not taking into account the nonsense that we all spewed out. Any of you guys doing your own prediction videos on Clutch Up? Anything?
If I post it, it's gonna be on Twitter. So you guys will be able to catch it there.
I'll maybe put some predictions up on Twitter, but obviously you'll be able to see, everyone will be able to see my fantasy team. So that'll be my on NA and EU. We'll do recaps for both regions on Clutch Up no matter what happens. And we re-released a banger today, I guess, when this comes out tomorrow. The evolution of 200 IQ strategies in
brilliant.
So
brilliant.
Yeah.
Be sure to go check that out. Be sure to go check out Clutch Up. Their Twitters will be in the description below. So if you want to go see what they tweet and see their predictions later on in the week, be sure to go check those out. And yeah, we will see you guys all again on another one.